Well, let's just start today with the workshop. Well, first of all, everybody, thanks for joining SauceCon, um, and also thanks for joining this workshop about mobile applications and mobile application testing. And I think you made a right choice because you will get three workshops today. Three workshops. The rest of the workshops is basically only one workshop, and then you will need to sit there for what is it, 3 or 4 hours. Today, we're going to give you three workshops related to mobile. And let's first start with the agenda for today about mobile app testing. The first workshop will be given by me. I've got two co-hosts, my colleagues Eyal and Chris. They will help me with automating hybrid apps with Appium. It will be a workshop of 2 hours, and after that, a good colleague of mine in your ear will tell you more about the secrets of mobile beta testing. Then, last but not least, we will also give you a workshop about testing in production, getting started with mobile crash and error reporting. And I think if you would look at all three subjects, we will also cover all three, basically the complete life cycle of your mobile application. So basically testing before you do something in production, helping you getting the feedback before you go to production with mobile beta testing, or maybe even when you're in production. And last but not least, also getting all the crash reports and all the error reporting that you might want to get about how your app is basically behaving in production. So like I mentioned, we're going to start with automating hybrid applications. It will be a 2-hour workshop and it will be led by me. My name is Wim Selles. I'm a lead solutions architect at Sauce Labs. And I'm not going to tell you more about myself. I think today it's more important to understand what we're going to do with hybrid applications and how we're going to automate that with Appium. And to do that, I wanted to look into 4 different areas. First of all, I want to look in hybrid apps and web views itself, basically just a piece of theory behind it. Then I want to dive a little bit deeper into detecting web views, where we have several tools that we can use to see if your application has a web view and how you can detect them. And then last but not least, we will look into Appium and also to the context of Appium. And last but not least, we will also look into the assignments, where basically all the theory that we're going to cover in the first 3 subjects will be handled basically with 3 different assignments, a basic assignment, looking at a little bit more of the things that you could do with Appium, and last but not least, also look into the extra things and the complex things that you could see or could get when you want to use Appium and one or multiple web views. But like I mentioned in the first point, let's first take a look at hybrid applications and also the web views themselves. And to understand basically the hybrid applications, I first want to look into the 3 type of apps that we have. And this is, I think, the most well-known application, basically the native application. This is an application that you might already have on your phone. They're built with the native iOS or Android SDKs. And there are even frameworks out there that let you build, for example, an iOS or an Android application with only one language. React Native is an example of that. Flutter is also getting some attention at the moment in the market. It's from Google, and it's a nice framework where you use one language, which is called Dart. And with that language, you can also build native applications. This was basically, if you go back, around 10 years ago, this was the only way also to build your application. The only way was to build native applications. You can find them in the App Store and the Google Play Store, can download them, install them on your phone, and could easily be used. The second app that we know are web applications. It could be mobile web applications or web applications itself. And those applications can be accessed on your desktop browser. They could be accessed on, for example, an iPad or a tablet, or they can be accessed on your iPhone or on your Samsung device, basically on an Android device. The The advantage of your web application is that you don't need to push anything to a store. You just host it somewhere. You can have your own server somewhere, or you host it in the cloud somewhere with your hosting provider. But the advantage of these applications, these mobile applications, are that they're built with HTML, JavaScript, CSS, and they basically create that beautiful look that you want to have. Everybody can build a website, everybody can host a website. If you look also at testing that website, it's pretty, well, we'll not say easy, but for most of the people, it is fairly doable to automate also this website. But if you would then look at hybrid applications, what is a hybrid application? Well, a hybrid application is basically the best of both worlds. And a hybrid application can be seen as a native application that uses a mobile web view object. Now you might wonder, okay, a mobile web view object, what do you mean with a mobile web view object? Well, if we look a little bit closer into hybrid application, then we can basically pull two parts from each other. We can create two separate parts when we're talking about mobile, about hybrid applications. And the two parts that I was talking about are the native part, basically the bar that you see at the bottom for this demo application, or the web view is basically some content that is being hosted in that hybrid application. You might then wonder, okay, well, if we're talking about mobile web view, what mobile web view object, what do you exactly mean with that? Well, when we're talking about a web view, then the web view loads and displays rich web content directly within your application. And then also that word rich web content, what do I need to do with it, or what can it do? Well, basically, when we're talking about rich web content, we're talking about HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. And there are two ways to use that in a hybrid application. You can, for example, embed that inside of your application. That hybrid application can be then pushed to the App Store or to the Google Play Store, and then you or your customers can download that application from the App Store. Basically, all the content, everything that you see in your screen, or most of the parts that you see in your screen, have been built with HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. Pretty easy to build those applications, especially if you have the JavaScript, HTML, or CSS. Sorry, that was my phone. Then if you have those skills, then you can create those applications pretty easy. And there are several frameworks out there that could help you with that. And one of the most known frameworks out there might be Ionic. Ionic is a framework that could help you create those applications based on HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. But there's also a second way that you could use the rich web content, not only by embedding it in your application when you release it to the app stores, but there's also a second way. And that second way is by using, for example, external hosted content. And every option, or both options, have their pros and their cons. One of the last assignments that I had when I was a consultant was also with a large banking organization within the Netherlands. And they selected hybrid applications, and they also chose to use external hosted content. And the advantage of that was that they could load that content into that hybrid application, and having the ability that they, if there was a bug, that they could release a fix for it within minutes. And they could also push new content to the application within minutes without thinking about releasing a new app through the App Store. No, they were able to release new content on the external hosted website, and that could be loaded inside of the banking hybrid application. So it also has some advantages using hybrid applications when you want to go faster and release faster to production without thinking about all the rules that you have for every release, all the checks and reviews you have for every release for native applications. But enough about this, enough about also the rich web content and about the first part about hybrid applications. If we think about the technology, then we also need to be aware of this when we want to automate this later on with Appium. So we also need to understand a little bit more about the techniques behind this. So let's take a look at that. If, for example, we're going to look at hybrid applications and we start with Android, then you would see that it uses a tool which is called the Android System Web View. That one is based on Chrome, or basically on Chromium, and the advantage of this one is that it is a separate system app. So basically, to process all the data in your hybrid application, the Android phone uses the Android System Web View, and the advantage is if there is a bug in it, it can be updated right away. So if it's needed, the bug can be fixed, pushed to production, and you can just download a new version of the Android System Web View. And I don't know if there are also a lot of Android users now during this workshop, but I think it was a year ago or something, Google released a new version of the Android System Web View, and it basically broke apps like Gmail and other apps from Google also itself. So they needed to fix this, they pushed the new version to the stores, and then it was fixed already for almost everybody who updated their system. But this is also good to understand, especially when we're talking about situations in production. If your customers might have issues with it, it might also be related to Android System Web View being an older version on their phone. If we then look at iOS, then we would see something else. On iOS, we would see that it uses the WK WebView component, which is powered by Safari. So the advantage already what you see in Safari is also what you can see in your iOS hybrid application. But there's also a downside. If we look at Apple itself, it is connected to the OS. It is embedded in the OS, meaning that if there is an issue in the WebView component itself, it will only be updated when there is a new OS version update. So people really need to keep their system up to date to make sure that they've got all the fixes from Apple, at least in their hybrid application. So this is not related to the content that you show, but basically the engine that is showing your content. So even though we now have kind of like the information about what a hybrid application is, there might be a few people now in this workshop, they're like, yeah, okay, this is nice, but what should I do with it? What can I do with it? Like our big friend Joey here. Well, let's just dive a little bit deeper into this, because today we're going to use also a hybrid application, which is basically a simple application using 3 different websites. I select or build this application by just hosting content outside, and we're going to use this with the Swag Labs website, demo website. There's also a link in this application to load the Sauce Labs website itself within the hybrid application. And then last but not least, we're also going to open the open source page. Basically 3 different websites hosted in this hybrid application. And we're going to look into how to, for example, detect the web views, dive a little bit more deeper into that. And in the end, we're also going to execute several types of test cases that you could use as knowledge, put them in your backpack. And if you need to automate hybrid applications now or in the future, you could hopefully use this knowledge to help you automate those applications, maybe even faster or better. So let's take a look at detecting web views. And what we're going to do with detecting web views is we need to use a few tools for that. And I'm going to start by using Appium Inspector. Hopefully you also had the opportunity to already download everything before the workshop. And if not, we've got at least a few extra minutes today to look into the setup everybody has. We're going to use Appium Inspector. Appium Inspector is the next application or the new version of Appium Desktop, maybe also well known by a lot of people. Appium Desktop is now only a server for Appium, and Appium Inspector is now the separate GUI for it. So we also need to start a separate Appium session to be able to connect to our device. And what we're going to do now is I'm going to walk you through a few commands to start Appium, and secondly also to use Appium Inspector, which capabilities you need to use. And when we've set that up, then we're going to look into how to detect the elements in Appium Inspector. So let's first start with starting Appium. If we want to start Appium, we first need to download it. Hopefully you already had the opportunity. And then we need to run it with one separate command in a terminal. We can do that by running the Appium command and also providing some extra capabilities, some extra command line arguments. The first argument that we provide is basically the command to start the Appium server itself. The second one will be the remote path. And a lot of people that already use or Selenium or already use Appium might say, okay, the base path, why do we only have a slash and why don't we use wd/hub? Well, if we look at Appium 2, then the wd/hub will be removed. And Appium Inspector is already prepared for using Appium 2. And so the only thing we now need to do when we're going to use Appium is to say the base path will basically be the slash. The third argument that we're going to use is relaxed security. And you might wonder, okay, what does that mean, relaxed security? Well, it's already explained there. No, just kidding. When we're talking about this, and especially when we're going to use something like Chrome and something like Android together, then we need to be aware that if we want to automate a hybrid application, we're also going to use Chrome, like I've shown you a few slides before. It uses basically the Chromium engine, but to automate Chrome, we need to use a Chrome driver. By default, when you install Appium, you will already get the latest Chrome driver pre-installed. But it could be that your phone is using an older version of Chrome or has an older version of the Android system WebView installed, and then Appium needs to figure out which version is installed. By providing this capability for your local machine, then Appium will automatically download the correct version of Chrome driver so it can automate also the version of the WebView that you have. And then last but not least, and this is more something that I use a lot, I use this command, which is called the log timestamp, and it will log extra timestamps when we want to look into the logs of Appium itself. It might make it a little bit easier to see, for example, the time differences between specific command or a request and a response. If we would start the server like this, we would get something like this, meaning we've got our terminal here and we would see at least the commands, the command that we started and also the first few lines of the log. If this is happening on your machine, then we're all settled and we can go to the next thing. The next thing will be starting Appium Inspector. And when we start Appium Inspector, we will get a screen like this. And you might now wonder, okay, why is there a red label on your screen and why don't I have that red label? Well, I'm using a specific fork of Appium Inspector here. The link is in the slides and I will also share this one afterwards. But if you're also a Sauce Labs user and you're using real devices on Sauce Labs, and this specific fork will also give you extra testing options for the real devices of Sauce Labs. For the rest, the functionality is the same as Appium Inspector. So everything that we're going to do here with Appium Inspector will be exactly the same in this fork as it is in the original version of Appium Inspector. What we now need to do is we need to provide some capabilities. And with capabilities, we basically tell, I want to start this device with this specific application. And we need to do that with W3C because Appium Inspector is already ready for Appium 2, and for Appium 2, W3C capabilities is the standard. They do not accept the old protocol, the JSON wire protocol anymore. So you might wonder, okay, W3C, how should I then construct my capabilities? Well, there's a very easy and basic rule for that one. If we're thinking about the capabilities, then there are only two capabilities that also Selenium uses that you could use for Appium. The rest of those capabilities are or Appium specific or they are vendor specific. So let's take a look at those two capabilities. The only two capabilities that can be used basically by everybody, or Selenium or Appium, are browser name, which will be Chrome or Safari, or platform name, which will be Android or iOS. There's also a third capability that you could use, and that is for everything that you want to do with Appium. And let me just show that one. Oh, the Appium one is not here in this slide. That's strange. Well, we'll see that later on. But basically everything from Appium needs to be prefixed with Appium, and then the name of the capability. Every driver for Android and also for iOS has its own capabilities or own specific capabilities. You can find those capabilities by going to or the Appium UI Automator 2 driver link or going to the XCUI test driver capabilities link. and then just say Appium colon and then the capability name. If you would do that, you will get something like this. We now already basically filled in all the capabilities, and here you would see that the platform name is the W3C one, and all the other capabilities here are the Appium specific capabilities. These capabilities are the same capabilities as you can find in the configuration file of the project that I've shared in the link or in the document before. Here you would find, for example, the platform version, you would find the device name, the app, and the app then needs to be the location where you have the application itself. And for this specific demo application, we also need to provide the Appium wait activity. That Appium wait activity will basically tell Appium to wait for at least Android for a specific activity to be started before it can start its own automation. If we want to do this for iOS, we have these capabilities. So one capability less in comparison to Android. Also the platform name, we would have the platform version, we would have the device name, and also the app itself. So if we use this, then we can inspect basically the elements within Appium Inspector. And what we're now going to do is we're going to look into how to inspect a login button, the default way, and also how to determine how it is a hybrid application and then try to inspect it as a hybrid application. And what I mean with the default way is that Appium, it doesn't matter what type of app you have, if you open a browser, or if you open, for example, the system settings of your mobile phone, or if you would open this hybrid application, by default, it will always start in a native app context. I will explain that later on. Hopefully it will become more clear for you, but the default way of inspecting elements for a hybrid application will be in the native context of the application. So let's take a look at that. When we would open our Android application, then we would have something like this. On the left, you would have a screenshot, in the middle, you would have the source, and on the right, you would have information about the element. And if I would now, we know in the back of our minds already, this is a hybrid application, but if I would now need to inspect this element for Android, then I would, for example, click on the left screen on login, then you would see that this button would look like android.widget.button itself. And there you would have an example of which selector you could use. Imagine now that the original source of this page is HTML, and Appium is now translating this into native elements, because what you're seeing here is, it might be XML, or it looks like XML, but it is not HTML. It is a different thing. But again, let's just take a look at this later on, where we're also going to inspect the hybrid application. If we need to do this for iOS, then you would see something like this. Again, on the left, the screenshot, the middle, the source, and on the right, you would see the element selectors that you could use. And if we then focus on the login button, you would already see here that the way that you need to select your elements, even though it's the same source, it's HTML, Appium translated this to native elements. So selecting the element will be different. And to make it a little bit more clear, if we would put them in a screen like this, then you would see that if we would use XPath, for example, we can find the elements like this. And I know XPath, especially for native applications, it's not the best way to use. It's not the recommended way, especially not for iOS. We're not looking into best practices for native applications now. I just wanted to show you this as an example. And imagine now that you need to automate a complete application, which might be a hybrid application, by using different types of selectors for Android and for iOS. I think you would get a very messy framework and also very messy code. So what should we do then? What if we want to use the HTML? Now, let's get back also to the Android example again. If we would use Appium Inspector and we say we want to use the specific button, then we can also see that this application has a web view. If you would now look at the highlighted part in the source code, basically the native translated source code, you would see that there is a web view. We can now also switch to that web view with Appium Inspector. To switch, we need to basically execute at least two steps. At the top of the screen, where you would see now the extra highlighted button box, you need to click the Web Hybrid App Mode button. If you would click on that one, you will get a refresh of your screen. And then on the right, you would see a yellow container and a drop-down box. That drop-down box will start with the native app, like I mentioned, the initial context of your application. And if you would open that drop-down box, you would see also the web view, the specific web view in this application. And the web view here is called Swag Labs, and then with web view underscore, and then the package name of this application. Selecting elements might be a little bit easier. If I would now select Swag Labs, web view underscore com, and then the package name, then the source will refresh, and then in Appium Inspector, you would see that you can select this specific element already. This is a feature that has been built into Appium Inspector, so hopefully you could already use this to see if your application is a web application or a hybrid application, and it might make it a little bit easier for you to select the elements, because now the login button is just an input field. And there you could use, for example, a login button, or you could even use an XPath if you want. It's basically the same also for iOS. Again, if you want to know if this is a web view or if this is a hybrid application, you will find this element XUI type web view. Then again, click on the button on top. It will refresh your source. You would see that yellow container. You would see the drop-down box. Click on the drop-down box, and you would see also the web view. Select the web view, and in the end, you would have the same source. You would have the login button, the input field, and again, the same way of selecting your elements. And if you would think about this, let's just put this also again in that same slide, then you would see that the HTML source is the same, and it's now easier to select elements in your web view. It might even make this much faster. So also a cross-platform way of selecting your elements now without thinking about different types of complex construction locator strategies. And when I knew this for the first time, I was like, this is one thing that I want to use. This is smart. Let's dive a little bit more into this, because we've got some things, we've got some advantages here that we could use. Because if we look at the advantages of using web views, then we can think about what are the advantages of using, for example, HTML. Well, the first thing is that if we are able to switch to a web view, the total execution time will be much faster. And there are two ways or two reasons for that. First of all, translating the elements, basically the HTML elements, to native elements is way slower. Appium needs to do that translation for you. So every time you are going to click on elements with a native selector, which could have been done with, for example, a Selenium selector, a CSS selector, or a normal HTML way of selecting your elements, it will be slower. And the chance that it will be more flaky is also higher. But there's more. The advantage, like I already mentioned, is that you've got the same selectors also for Android and iOS, making this much easier for you also to maintain your framework. And what you also have is that you've got access to all the elements on the page. You might wonder, okay, all the elements on the page. Well, if you use native applications and you use the native drivers, and for especially Android, you will not get back all the elements that are on the page. I don't know if you've ever looked into the source of, for example, a web application. Then you would see HTML, then you would see your head, you would see all the content in the body. But if you would look at the source of a native application for Android, then you will only find the elements that you see on the screen. You will not see all the elements that you normally would only see when you scroll. That source is not available for Android. So this already makes it much easier. But there's more, and I think this is something that is really, really powerful for hybrid applications. Because if you switch to the web view, you also have access to the URL, like you would normally have with, for example, your web application. But you also have access to, for example, application storage, like local storage, like session storage or cookies. Those are kind of like the storage, the application storage options that your developers might use to store certain information of your application in the application storage of the website. And you also have the option to manipulate the DOM. by hiding or removing or moving elements that might make it easier to sometimes automate certain situations, especially if we need to automate, for example, a file upload. Sometimes you don't have an input field because it's hidden. With some dumb manipulation, you could show that input field. And there are many more things that you could do. And when I saw this the first time, when I knew basically the powers of automating web views, basically using the web view and just using the powers of the web itself, this was in 2014, and to be honest, I couldn't dance, but I was basically doing this at the large bank. It was like, okay, I've got some powers here now. I can really do something with the automation. So there are also some downsides, because when we're talking about advantages, when we're talking about web views itself, and we're talking about advantages, there also need to be some downsides. And yes, one of them is that, well, we will get back to that downside later on. And I think we will also touch on downsides when we're going to automate this. I think what's more important now is, now that we know how to detect it manually, how can Appium also help us when we need to write our automation script? So let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at Appium and also the context of Appium. First of all, a context. What is a context? Well, it is the circumstances that form the setting for an event, statement, or ID, and in terms of which it can be understood. Do you understand it? Well, if I read this, I'm not really 100% sure how I should read this or how I should understand this. So let's get back to one of the first slides that I've shown you, where I've shown you that you've got your native context, basically the button, the tab bar at the bottom, and you would also have your web view context, basically the website that is being loaded inside of your application. Those are the two contexts that at least Appium can detect in your application. And it could use those contexts, and it could switch between the contexts. So before we look into switching, let's take a deeper dive into context themselves. If we look at Appium, and like I mentioned at the beginning, it already knows one context. It will always start in the native app context, but it might know more contexts. So Appium knows 1 to n, and that could be a very large number, but it knows 1 to n context. It could be, for example, the WebView context for Android. For Android, it is basically WebView_com and then a name. For iOS, it will be a number. This is also basically the naming convention. If you need to automate something on Android, it will be WebView_package name. But if we talk about iOS, it will be WebView_ID. This is already one of the downsides of web views. For Android, we can already determine which application is connected to that web view, but for iOS, we cannot. We cannot rely on the numbers we get back. Those are random numbers. You could now see 8891.12, but tomorrow you can see 1235.78. You cannot rely on that. That's also one of the downsides of automating this. But on the other hand, there are also workarounds, and we will cover those workarounds also today. Now that we know this, let's take a look at what Appium can do to detect those web views. Which commands do you have? Which commands can we use when we're going to automate a hybrid application? First of all, you have one really useful command. The useful command is get all context. And depending on the language that you're going to use for your own automation framework, for example, for Java, you need to use driver.getContextHandles. But for example, we're going to use JavaScript today. Hopefully you were able to set everything up also in your local machine. But for JavaScript, it will be context with an S at the end. We can then get all the context. And the response of this command will be an array of strings. It will give you all available context, like you can see here. The output for iOS would be native app and then the web view with the numbers. And for Android, it would be native app and then, for example, web view with the package name. But if I would have opened, for example, Chrome in the background, I would also have here webview_com.chrome. So this is how iOS works, and this is how Android works when you're using the get context command from Appium. And now that we know how to get all the context, when you think about automating, sometimes you also want to know which context am I using now? So there's also a command which is called get the current context, or basically get context. It will give you back the context you are currently operating, or basically where Appium currently is operating in. And it will basically just be a string. And depending on where you are, you can get web view with all those numbers or native app, or you would get that single string also for Android. And then if you know this, you're like, okay, I now have the context. I know the current context. I also want to switch to that specific context. And you can use a command for that one. For example, context, and then provide also the name of the context that you want to switch to. So now you can use Appium to switch from context A to B to C, or go back to being a native application again. If we now look at this, like the things that we've covered in this first theoretical part, we now know basically the differences between native, web, and hybrid apps, especially when we need to use it for the automation. We now also have seen how to detect web views, and we now also know a few of the advantages of the web views. We also covered the Appium commands for different types of context, for getting them all, switching, and also to get the current context. But now that you've seen this, you might be like this, where there's a lot of information. I don't know what to do with it. Okay, so let's just look into the assignments, because we had, I think, a lot of theory now. Let's take a look at what we can do when we're going to automate it. How should we use it? So let's dive a little bit more into the assignments. Hopefully everybody had the opportunity to read the prerequisite doc, and everybody also had the opportunity to clone this. If not, then I will share the link in a few seconds also in the chat. If you have been able to set up your environment, you should be able to already start your first emulator and to run a single test as stated in the instructions. So what we're now going to do is I'm going to give everybody 10 minutes to also check the configuration. I will share the link also in the chat, and everybody will have that 10 minutes to configure their machine, basically to make sure that they've got the project. And if there are any questions, we've got 10 minutes from now, meaning it's now, well, for me, it's 5:40. So it will be 10 before the hour that we're going to proceed with the first assignment. But first, we're going to check the configuration. I will stop the presentation here. I will copy also the link and put it also in the chat for the people who didn't have the opportunity yet. And let me go to the chat. And oh, thank you very much, Eyal. Awesome. So I will mute myself now for a few minutes, and we will back in 10 minutes. If you have any questions about your environment, about starting this, cloning the project, then feel free to put them also in the comments or in the chat here. I'm going to unmute myself for a little bit. Darshak asked also a question. If I downloaded Appium server itself, can I just start it through the command line or through the GUI itself? You need to use the GUI, but there's one thing you also need to do here, Darshak, before you're going to start it. You need to look into preset, the advanced version, and then you need to make sure that this feature, relaxed security, is also enabled. If you do that, then it will also automatically download Chrome driver. The best thing, by the way, if you have the possibility, is to use to use just a global installation of Appium in your terminal. That is basically the way also that we provided through the workshop prerequisites to install Appium through your command line. And that should make it a little bit easier, especially if we're also going to run this later on with our automation. Well, 10 minutes are over. I hope everybody had the opportunity to make sure that the configuration is done. Yes, I got a question here from Kushikata. Let me just share this specific slide to start the Appium server, which is basically this one. Provide the Appium command, then --base / and then relaxed security and log timestamp. Basically, this. Oh, thank you, Eyal. And also just a question from Anu. You mentioned that there is a warning for the web view. And that is correct, that it might not be as accurate. Where was that warning? It is somewhere. Let me just see. Yes, it's basically this warning that you see. I'm also going to cover this later on. We're now just going to focus on using Appium Inspector, but for a next assignment, we will also look into using the dev tools of, for example, Chrome. So now let's get back to the presentation. Hopefully everybody had the opportunity to make this work on this machine. Now let's take a look at this part. Let me just start my presentation again. And wrong. These are the notes. I need to have them in a different. Yes, let's do it like this. Okay, we already talked about using native screens. Now we're also going to dive into using the web view for the automation. If we, for example, look at what we already saw, when we need to use, for example, the native view, we would have elements like this, and we would also have basically the source like you see here. This is pretty hard, especially when you need to go to that complete flow. If we need to write this, if we go to use the native elements, then you would get a script like this for Android, and you would have, for example, an XPath like asterisk, and then searching for the resource ID to automate logging in, making sure that you are waiting for the screen, then submitting your data, and then verifying, for example, that we're there on time. Then you would also see that automating this takes 6.3 seconds. And 6.3 seconds, to be honest, if every script that I would run on a mobile device would only take me 6.3 seconds, I would be happy. I would just shout it off the rooftop, because then I can automate everything very fast. But this is only for a few steps. This is not automating your complete flow. But if we, for example, look at iOS, we would have selectors like this. And this would pass in around 8.7 seconds. It has to do with the fact that iOS, especially with XPath, is much slower in comparison to Android. And in this example, it isn't that much. It is around 3 seconds, but in larger applications, this will be much larger. And if you would look at this, then we already know that this, basically just selecting HTML, would be easier, that it would also be faster. So how do we switch? Well, we already saw the commands from Appium that we could use. We could select our web views, and we could then say, okay, go to this specific web view. But that's not something that we're going to do for the first assignment. I wanted to make it as easy as possible today. The first assignment will only dive into selecting elements. So I already mentioned the first view will be native app. Well, what will we do with that? Well, there is a function or a capability from Appium that will help you make your life easier, especially when you have a hybrid application and when that hybrid application has a web view as the first screen. If we, for example, add this specific capability to our capabilities, and what you see here is a JavaScript object, we have Appium auto web view to true, then it will automatically switch to the web view for you. So in this assignment, you don't need to switch to the web view. Appium will do that automatically for you. Because for assignment 1, what we're going to do is that we're going to learn the ease of selecting elements in a web view. And hopefully you were able to set up your Appium inspector, use your Appium inspector to find the elements, or we're going to, you can also do it in a different way, and that is being explained in this assignment. If you open your favorite IDE, go to the folder Tests, Specs, and Exercises. There you would find the assignment 1 in the exercises, and then at the top you would have basically the steps that you need to take. And like I mentioned, you could do that through Appium Inspector. But because this application, this hybrid application, loads 3 different URLs, which you can just access on the internet, you can also open a browser and just go to saucedemo.com and then use the DevTools to find the CSS selector. And basically the only thing that I'm asking here from you is just to replace what you see here. This is a string, replace it with the selector you want to use. If you want to use an ID of an element, then use basically, how do you call it? It's not the asterisk, it's the bracket for the ID, or you can use a dot if you want to use it for a class to select this. I'm going to give you 15 minutes, so 15 minutes to run this assignment, and then see if you can make this run on your local machine by selecting your elements. Let's just say that 15 minutes over the hour, because we're in different time zones, I think, within 15 minutes, we should be able to at least get the first part running. And if there are any questions about this, then feel free to ask this in the chat, and then we can also help you with that. In a few seconds, I will also put my, let me just open a new tab here. There it is. I will put my editor also here and make this a little bit bigger. So basically what we're going to do now, and let me just make this bigger, yes, is when you open your favorite editor, you need to go to the folder tests. In tests, you will find the folder spec. In the spec folder, you will find assignments, and there you will find assignment 1. In assignment 1, you will find basically the steps that you could do. If you also have iOS on your machine and you were able to configure it on your machine, try to maybe also run it on iOS. And if you have some extra time when you were able to find all the elements, then maybe also run these 2 specific commands, because then, at least if you have a Windows machine or Linux, you can run for Android. If you also have a Mac, you can also run the iOS, and then you could compare execution times of running it in native mode in comparison to running it as a hybrid / switching to the web view. Good luck with it. We've got 15 minutes, and I will check in after a few minutes. If there are any questions, feel free to put them also in the chat. We have a few minutes left, but is everybody already able to run this, or does anybody have any issues? Also, a good remark from Chris Cow. If you're facing issues with running specific commands and the log is not helping you, if you would go to configs and would go to the shared one, then here at line, where is it? Line 34, you can change the logs from silent to debug. And if you change it to debug, then you would have more lines in the logs telling you basically for every command what is happening. So hopefully that will also help you to get more and better logs. For now, it was enabled just to set it on silent, not giving you too much logs. But if you want to have more logs, put it to debug or run it with minus minus space minus minus a log level is debug. Okay, hopefully everybody was able to run it. Some people are also asking me questions through the DM. Feel free to just pop them also in the session chat. It will make it a little bit easier, and Chris and Eyal are also there then to help you with questions that you have. Because if you send me a DM during the presentation, I cannot answer. So if you have a question, feel free to put them in the chat. Eyal and Chris are happy there to help you. Oh, and a last question from Lisbeth. Good question. When you look at the configuration, you don't need to change that auto web view. And just for people that are curious about this, the question that Lisbeth had was, do I need to change this value specifically in my configuration for this specific test session? Not, because when we're going to run a command, it will automatically be populated to true or to false based on the command that we're running. So you don't need to worry about setting that one. It will be done for you automatically. So if we would run the test cases, and that's I think also a question that Beat has. I hope I pronounce also your name properly. If we would run the test cases, let me just get back to my presentation, then we would get answers like this. And people could have their own way of, for example, waiting for an element. I just wait for the login button container, but you could also wait for the username, for example. Then hopefully also when you looked into Appium Inspector or when you looked at DevTools from Chrome, you also found that you could use the username and also the password to set the values and then click on the button itself to go to the next page. And then we just need to wait for it. And if you would look at this, then executing the test case with, for example, Android or with, for example, iOS, you saw that it is pretty fast. It is around 1 second here, as you could see. And that's pretty fast. 1 second for Android and almost 1.5 seconds for iOS. And maybe you remember that the native test execution was around 6 to 8 seconds. This is a reduction of around 70 to 80%. And then just keep in the back of your mind that if you have a web view, if you have a hybrid application, that you will not have 80% reduction if you're going to change everything to the web view. But it will definitely help you speed up also your test cases. So if we're also talking about speeding, so what should we do now? If we now know how to basically select our elements in an easier way by using what the DevTools or by using Appium Inspector. I think we can already be a little bit proud about ourselves because we already had the first assignment and hopefully you were able to run it. And if not, there are already answers out there in the project. If you already want to look into the answers, you don't need to check out a specific fork or a branch or whatsoever. No, you can just go to the answers folder and then go to the answers of the assignment that you want to take. If that's the way that you want to learn, to also look at the answers, I don't mind. Everybody has its own way of learning. So if you want to verify if you did it how you should have done it or could have done it, then you can also find the answers there. But I also want to get back to the advantages because we want to do something else. We want to look into some more things that we could do. And I already mentioned that there are a few things like faster. We already experienced that running it with the web view is significantly faster with the web view in comparison to the native execution. But there are 3 things that are really, really important to understand. And the 3 things that I think are really useful are accessing the URL, access the application storage, and also being able to manipulate the DOM. Those 3 things will give you more powers. It will open the door to the full potential of automating web views. So let's take a look at a new assignment and just think about the following automation case or following test case that you need to automate. The test case is that we want to verify the checkout overview. And the checkout overview is basically you log in, you select a product. Well, let's just walk through it. You need to log in. After the login, the product page is shown. You need to verify that it is shown. Then you need to select a product, click on Add to Cart. Or you click on Add to Cart. You need to go to the cart, verify that you're on that page. Well, basically a lot of steps. A lot of steps just to verify that we're in that checkout. If I now need to create an automated test case out of this, and I want to verify the checkout, I've got basically this. This is a way on how I can basically walk through my application. But the only thing I want to do is basically this. I just want to verify that checkout page. I don't want to do all the extra steps here. This will slow me down. And hopefully when you're used to automating something for the web, for example, with Selenium, you might have found some tricks to speed up this process. So how can we do that? Let's take a look at that. How can we normally solve this? And this is the second way that I wanted to show you, or basically the third way for you to show you how to inspect elements or how to inspect your hybrid application with your mobile phone, with your emulator, or maybe with your simulator. For now, I'm going to focus on an Android emulator because I assume everybody has that installed on its phone. The process for a Safari, basically for iOS, is not that different. The only thing you need to change is instead of using Chrome, you need to use Safari to inspect elements. So let's take a look at the steps you need to take. This is, for example, my emulator. I've got Android, an Android emulator, Android 10 here. I've got the application installed. What I now need to do is I now need to open Chrome. When I open Chrome, I need to enter the following data in the input field, which is basically Chrome, column, inspect, and // and then inspect. Devices will be added automatically. Now you will already see that it detected the web view. So Chrome is smart enough to detect that it's an Android device that is connected to your local machine, basically the emulator, and that it detects that there is a web view. We can now also inspect that web view. When we inspect that web view, we can click on the inspect button here, and then a new window will open. And as you can already see here, we've got the source code here. We've got all the source code, so more elements than we would have with Appium Inspector itself. With Appium Inspector, we do not have all the attributes. We would only have div, form, div, and then maybe one or two attributes, but that's it. This is the original source. We can now also manipulate this source if we want. But for this specific test case, I want to dive into something extra, because if we want to use the full potential, we also need to understand a little bit more about our application. And especially if you're going to automate this for your customer, maybe have a conversation with your developer. How do you handle, for example, the login? What data is needed to be able to go from screen A to screen C instead of also walking through all the other screens? Like I mentioned, this is a demo application. This demo application is pretty straightforward when we're talking about storing data into your application. We now need to go to the application tab, which we have here. And if we would click on that application tab, we would see information about local storage. We would see information about session storage. We would see information about also cookies, because this specific website uses local storage to store the data, for example, store the article that you want to select, and we use cookies to log in and to store basically that you're logged in, yes or no. But like I've already mentioned, you now also have access to the URL. I could now, for example, just change this URL to the URL of the checkout page that I wanted to verify. So keep these things in the back of your mind. Make sure that everything is basically there. That is something that we're going to explore in a few seconds. So when I saw this, I was like, what? I could now really speed up my test cases. I can now test the things that I really need to test instead of going through the login all the time. Because then I'm sure that login will be the best test feature of my application. But what if login is broken? Then I cannot test other things. And with these steps, I'm able to test, for example, pages behind the secure login. And like I mentioned, this might be different in comparison to what you have in your own application. So please also have a conversation with the developers. But this can help you by accessing basically everything like the application storage, looking into what is happening in your application. So let's take a look at assignment 2. And in assignment 2, the learning or the goal of this assignment will be that you will learn the full potential of web views. And we will do that with a second assignment, with assignment 2. You can find it also in the same folder with the exercises. What I want you to do is to basically follow the steps that I also shown you. You could do that by opening your emulator and then opening Chrome and say Chrome colon slash slash and then inspect. Or if you want to make it easier for yourself, again, this is just a simple website. You can go also to the URL again, then log in with, open the DevTools and also go to the application tab, then log in with the username standard user and password sauce, and then also check the cookies. Then also add a product and also check the local storage. That information can be useful when you're going to automate this because there are a few steps. We need to be sure that we can remove the cookie name. Oh, sorry, too far. The local storage will automatically be cleared for you. You now need to set a cookie and a cookie value. So that's basically what you've explored in this step. And then last but not least, I want you to add the local storage name and also the local storage value. And last but not least, also the correct URL. So those are the three things or four things that you need to do. Get the cookie name, add the new cookie, add the local storage, and also add the correct URL. And then you should be able to automate this instead of going through all the screens, basically starting the application, log in through a backdoor, and immediately go to the specific page you want to go. You don't need to do all the verification magic. That's not needed in this assignment. I just want you to focus on using that specific backdoor, using the full potential of WebViews. I'm also going to give you 15 minutes for this, maybe a little bit shorter, otherwise we won't be able to make it. But I'm also there in the chat. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them. Sid, we're going to alter the file to, basically, if you go to specs, to assignments, and then assignments2.spec, that's the one that we're going to change. I'm seeing a few people having some challenges also with their emulator running, and I don't know how far the rest is. Um, so what I want to do now is just to look into the answer and also proceed also with the workshop. You can always contact us afterwards if you have any questions about the specific assignments. But also in favor of making sure that we make it also in time and also give Jair enough time for his workshop and also Vincent enough time for his workshop. I want to proceed now. So let me get back to the presentation and look into also the answer. And this is a really nice screenshot that nobody could read. I don't know why this one is messed up as this. Sorry for that. It's kind of strange why it's not giving the right one. Let me just go back then to my code itself and just open the answer. If I would go to assignment 2, I would open that file. Then in the answers, you would see that we need to change the document, or basically the cookie. The cookie for logging in was session-username. We need to put it basically to the value empty. This means that the cookie will be removed if there was any cookie left. This is basically just making sure that we're logged out. The storage is being cleared also in this specific command. And what will happen here is we're now going to set a new cookie. This is the cookie that you hopefully also found, session username, and that the value needed to be standard user. And then we also needed to add the local storage. The local storage in this case was cart contents. And then we needed to provide an array with the number. We could do 4 or 1 or 6 or 0. Those are the numbers of the articles that you could add. And then last but not least, we needed to change the URL to going to sauce-demo.com/checkout-stat-2.html. If you've executed all these steps, then you should have been able to, or the automation process should have been able to log you in through a backdoor and immediately go to the page you want to go. Meaning you're going to skip all the other pages and it will save you some time. If we would now go back to also the presentation, what you would see here on top, this is the execution time. If I would do all the steps, basically log in, add something to the cart, then go to the cart, then put in your credentials or at least your shipping information, then you would have your checkout overview. It will take you at least 4 seconds on Android. If you would do this with the new way, you would already save some time here. This would be around 3 to 4 seconds that you could save here. It's a little bit less for iOS because iOS is a little bit slower in this case, but still there is an advantage here that you could get when you're using the backdoors. It will also make it more stable in the end because you would have less commands sending to Appium itself. So now let's take a look also at some more complex WebView use cases, because in the previous 2 sessions, we used the auto WebView option of Appium. And in real life, this is not always possible. In some cases, you might not have a WebView as the first screen in your application. So you might need to switch between the WebViews. Or you might not be able to find the right web view because sometimes you might have multiple web views. So how should we handle this? Well, like I already mentioned, this is what Appium knows. We know the package name and we know the file ID. The ID is basically kind of like a downside because the downside is that I don't know which specific web view is loaded. But let's also get back to the commands. Let's just take a look. We had the get all context. We could use that to get basically an array of strings. We could get that back for iOS and we could get that back for Android. We could use the get current context, basically telling you which context we're currently in, which would be basically just a string that will be returned. And then last but not least, we also have the option to set the current context. And when we do that, we are able to switch between the web views. At least that's what we think that we could do. Because in this case, we've got 3 web views in our application. We've got the Swag Labs, the Sauce Labs application, and we will also have the open source website that we could visit. If we would now use those commands and we would ask how many contacts do we have, and we would do that, for example, for iOS, then we would see native app as the initial one. When the web view is loaded, we would see a number, and then something will be added. And then again, if we go to the third page, something will be added again. There is no order. There is no way of knowing which number is coming. And it could also be that the next time that you're asking, that 8891 will not be in the same place it is now. It might be at the first one. So also do not rely on the order. If we would do this for Android, then we would get back native application, and especially when the initial web view, basically the Swag Labs website is loaded, you would get back Sauce Labs hybrid app. If we then go to Sauce Labs, the website, basically, then we get back, hey, I'm not seeing something new. And if I would go to open source, I'm still seeing the same web view getting back. But I changed my web view because that's what you see in the application itself. I went from the Swag Labs to Sauce Labs to open source. So this is also a downside. We don't have enough web view information when we're going to use web views. So how can we overcome this? Well, there are some ways. For example, by creating your own workarounds. If you would use this web view, you have the option with the commands that Appium is providing you to say, let's just switch to the web view and then ask for the title of the page or ask for the URL, whatever you want to do. Then for iOS, you will get more information. If you switch, you know that you're on the Swag Labs website. If you go to the second web view, then you might get on the Sauce Labs website and get that back as the title. And then last but not least, if we go to the third one, you will have open source. Then the open source website title will be shown. So let's do this for Android. For Android, we can also switch to the context by using switch context webview _com.saucelabs hybrid app and ask for the title. The title in this case will be Swag Labs. If we do that for the second screen, so if we click on Sauce Labs, then no, I will have the same title. And if I do this for open source, I also have the same title. And then you might be like, Joey, like, why God? Why is this happening to me? Why can't I just find a reason or just a reasonable way to do the automation? I want to have more information. Well, you can. If we go back to the documentation, and this is something that happens a lot to me, if I buy something new, I never read the manual, because if you would read the manual, there you would see that Appium tells you if you want to have more information, please use a mobile command, which is called mobile get context. That mobile get context will give you more information. So let's try to use that one in the examples here and ask the contexts when we're on the initial page. And you would see you would get back, instead of an array of strings, you will get back an array of objects, and every object would at least have the ID, but it would also have a title, a URL, and a bundle ID for iOS. So let's just take a look at that for all 3 pages. For Sauce Labs, you would get a different title, a different URL, and for the last one, you would just get a new object with all the information. The advantage of this command for iOS is that I just execute one command and I have all the information. With the workaround that I've shown you a few slides back, you need to switch, you need to get the title. That will take at least 6 or 7 commands for you to get the same information that you can get with just one command. So now let's take a look at Android. How will the information for Android look like? Well, for Android, we've got 2 things. First of all, we only would get back an array of objects where you, for example, would have the title here, the web view name. That's the web view name that we already saw when we switched to, or we asked for the web view. We also have some information about the browser itself, but more important, there's a pages array here. And the pages array will hold all the extra web views. Let's just take a look at the second page. If we would now go, for example, to Sauce Labs, then I collapsed the information, then you would see that there's a new page added. Here's the old page. And if you would then do that for the third one, you would see that there's another page added, which is basically the Sauce Labs open source site. But if you would also now look into the pages array, you would also see a fourth one, a service worker. What is it? Well, this one is connected to open source. Well, the type is not pages service worker. So if you're going to process this information, you need to look at least at a page. The type needs to be page. And if we now think about this, if we could use this command, and if we want to write something which is cross-platform, then we might need to do something ourselves. We might need to make this a little bit easier for ourselves. We need to kind of like create our own internal API or maybe our own internal way. Let's create a helper or something. We know for Android that we will get back the arrays, the array of objects with pages in it. For iOS, we know that we will get this information, but we also know that it at least has an ID, at least it has a title, it has a URL, a bundle ID for iOS, and we almost have the same information. We have a web view name for Android, we have a URL for Android, we have a title for Android, and we have an ID for Android. So what we can now do, if we can process this information, we can now create our own API and say, okay, if we have a helper, doesn't matter if we then process the information for iOS or Android, let's just return information like this. This might make it a little bit more complex because you need to create that helper, but it will definitely help you select the right web view, because now you can just filter the array of information and say, just give me a page that looks or that has a title that contains foo or bar or Sauce Labs, or search for a URL. And then I only need to have one command, search through the array, get the ID, and then switch to it. That's also what we're going to do in the next slide or in the next assignment. Switching between multiple web views. For iOS, it's pretty straightforward. If we have the ID, we can just use switch context with the web view ID. For Android, we need to take an extra step. For Android, we need to take the extra step, which is basically first switch to the web view. This is the web view of our application. The second step we need to do is we need to switch to the frame. And for people that were, familiar with Selenium, they might know that this is almost the same for switching between tabs or switching between iframes. For Android, we need to use that knowledge. The only thing we need to add is we need to add a prefix. If we add that prefix, we are able to basically select the internal pages inside of that web view. And this is also one of the cases that I saw with one of our customers where they thought that they selected the right web view. They only selected this. They were able to find an element, but that was not the active web view. That was not the active page. So it was clicking on the wrong page. Then nothing happened in the application itself. This is the way how you should do it for Android. So now that we know this, we can basically just sit back, relax, because now we can create a script that would make our life easier because it will be cross-platform, iOS and Android. Basically, Joey and Chandler. Just kidding. What we're going to do now in assignment 3 is the following. We're going to learn how to handle selecting complex web views. And I'm not going to bother you with writing a complex script. I already wrote the helpers for you. So if you were already able to run the test cases before, you should be able to also run the test cases that are being explained in assignment 3. You don't need to do a lot of extra things. You also don't need to walk through all of the steps. I also realized that we only have 13 minutes left, and I had around 15 minutes assigned for this specific test case. What I will do, I will give you around 5 minutes. It might not be a lot, but I also want to finish basically this this workshop and also give you a few minutes extra to or go to the bathroom for our before we have our next workshop, or to also ask some questions. So for this assignment, I will only give you, like I mentioned, 5 minutes. Sorry for that. I should talk less in the next time. If you go to assignment 3, you can find assignment 3 again in the assignments. Click on assignment 3, and there you would find basically everything that you need to do. There are multiple test cases. You don't need to run them all. Those test cases are basically there to show you which information you will get back when you run specific commands. There's also that specific helper that you can use. Everything is in here. Good luck with it.
William, is that a good time to tell the audience what we're going to do in 12 minutes?
Yeah, you can already explain it a little bit. We've got
Just
5
a
minutes.
teaser,
Yeah,
just like they say after the commercials, stay with us. So in 12 minutes, we're going to talk about mobile beta testing, and we're going to share the best tips and tricks that we learned from thousands of companies that used our platform for mobile beta testing. It'll be very interesting. Wim will stay with me. So see you later. Don't go anywhere. That was like in the commercials, right?
Yeah, that was commercials.
Well, to be honest, that was, as you saw on my Slack channel, it was for testing my microphone to see that it works. So we now know that we're aligned. See you here in 10 minutes.
Thanks to you. Okay, I wanted to get back again to the last part of the presentation and the workshop. Hopefully, you had the opportunity to at least run one of the test cases here, where you can just change skip to only, and then it will run one specific test case. And every test case has its own purpose and will show you information about what could go wrong or what should you see in the test itself or in the logs about the web views. For now, I want to go back to the presentation and show you basically about assignment 3. If we look into what we've seen with assignment 3, then you would also see that you will get more information when you're using the mobile get context, especially for Android, also for iOS, but Android will give you more information, making sure that you could select the right web view or basically the right page within that web view in Android. You would also see that iOS will have a single web view for every web view number that you would have in your application. And like I mentioned, for Android, only has that one web view, but it contains multiple tabs or windows like you would normally have with the tabs in your browser or with iframes. And then last but not least, if you want to automate this properly, and that was basically the complex part, you need to create your own helper, basically do it yourself, because there is a huge difference in how Android handles everything for you in comparison to what iOS does for you. If I now just take a look at everything about what we've learned, or at least what we've also touched when we're talking about automating hybrid apps, then we first of all looked into the differences. We now also looked into how to detect web views with or Appium Inspector, or maybe even with Chrome or Safari with the DevTools. We also covered the Appium commands for different types of contexts and also to give that extra information. We also covered finding and interacting with the elements in the web views and also being able to set certain stages, change pages, making it a little bit easier for you to go from screen A to C and really test what you need to do and also speed it up. And last, also but not least, how to overcome and simplify the technical differences between Android and iOS web views. I hope you enjoyed this workshop. You also learned a few things from this workshop, also how to use the web views for your automation project. We still have a few minutes left for a few questions, but if you already want to go to take a pit stop, as they call it, please do so, because within a few minutes, yeah, you will see here about beta testing, and I think you also don't want to miss that.
Wim, that was a great presentation.
Thank you.
But I'm
Thank
not
you.
surprised because all your presentations are great.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Sorry. Setting the bar now for you.
Yeah, but after you, it's not. It's always lowering the bar. We started with the best. Well, I'm not sure who's after us. It's no, I'm not.
No, no, just kidding.
So it's going down for going up again. In any case,
Awesome.
yeah, I think that we have quite a lot of people here today.
Yeah.
And shall I share my screen?
Yeah. I will stop
Or,
sharing mine.
getting started? And
Yeah.
let's see if I can share my screen. That's also a challenge. What do you know? It worked.
Yeah. I can see your screen.
Yes. Okay. So we'll start in just a few minutes. Go get yourself a cup of coffee. And we're going to talk here about mobile beta testing in just a few seconds. All right, let's get started. So I hope that everybody's ready. If you're with us now, I have no idea. Just say something in the chat. Say hi. Say your name, your company, something in the chat, so we'll see that this session is live. At least one person. Oh, you don't have to. Oh, there's Detroit Labs here. Thank you, Nicholas. Hey, Susie. Well, Susie is one of ours. And Wim is here. I'm Yair and I'm from Test Fairy. Hi, Stan. And I'm going to tell you everything I know about mobile beta testing. We're going to share some tips from companies that did that really well, and it helped them solve real problems and improve their products dramatically. This is me, and I'm Testberry CEO. I joined Sauce a little over a year ago, and I'm a full stack entrepreneur, as we call it. So in Testberry, I did product and marketing and sales, and I'm an engineer in my background. I started in C and C++, building software for dinosaurs. I doubt it if anybody in the audience knows C and C++. That will be a very nice surprise. And I started my career in QA. Oh, Pascal. Nice. Yes. Pascal is great. So if anybody wants to connect, I'm on LinkedIn, search my name, and I'll be happy to be your friend. And we can talk about testing. And this slide is a slide I stole from Wim's presentation, and I really like that. Wim, I hope that's okay with you. And I think that is a very important lesson that every person in this audience learned. We all have bugs, and this is how we feel when somebody else finds them. So we need to find them before we get embarrassed. And embarrassment is not just about being embarrassed, it's losing money and losing business. And if somebody can't work with your shopping cart and buy something with your app, it's not just embarrassment, it can cause a lot of damage. So there's a lot of ways to do quality. We're going to talk about beta testing. And beta testing is the process of testing software with a friendly audience that behaves like our real customers before the actual release. And there are a few interesting, important points here. It should be a friendly audience. It should be somebody that wants to help us. If we'll just ship our app to a group of people that are not fully into helping our team to test the app, they will not report those bugs that we're looking for. And those people need to behave like our real customers. If our product is for people who ride bicycles, and we will ship it to a random audience that doesn't have a bicycle, we will not get those bugs. So that audience needs to be to look as close to our target audience as possible. If it's for a specific gender or a specific age or a specific use case, that beta test group should be as close to that group as possible. And I wrote here that the process is before the actual release, but it's not only before, it's before and during. Because as I'll explain very soon, the process is ongoing and it never ends. The classic beta test is continuous, and it will continue forever. As long as we can, we will continue running cycles with the same audience that will work on our product. And the first thing that I want to talk about is we need to make it super easy to report bugs. I guess that many of you that tried some beta testing in a company, there's a name for that. It's called dog food in many companies. Dog food, I saw dog food, cat food, bird food, monkey food. There are lots of ways to call that process. And in many of the companies that I met, users needed to fill in forms or, God forbid, open a Jira ticket when they find a problem. Now, if you will request your audience to open Jira tickets, the ones that will open Jira tickets are the ones that feel comfortable with Jira, which is not a lot of people. And it'll probably be the engineering, but that secretary from the second floor that found a problem in the Group 1 app will probably not go to Jira. They don't feel comfortable with that. So if we'll make it super easy to report bugs, that will increase our chances to get that $1 million bug before it gets to production. I will show you at the end of this presentation how we do it in TestFairy. However, I want to focus on the benefits and the best advice that I can give, regardless of the tools that obviously we would recommend using the Sauce products. But this advice and all the advice that you'll get here is relevant to any tool that you use. If you want to use the Microsoft tools or the Google tools or the Apple tools, this advice would be same. We call eating our dog food drinking our own wine. I've heard that as well. Drinking our own champagne, I've heard that. I think that cat food I heard in Groupon, and bird food and monkey food I heard in Google. But there are lots of names for the same process of company employees trying out the product in order to help the technical team. So when we spoke to people about why they didn't report bugs, we got lots of answers. One of them was, I'm too busy, now it's not a good time. It takes too much time, our bug system is not friendly. We mentioned that. Somebody probably reported that bug. Last time I reported the bug, I needed to attend a conference call. It's late now and I want to go to bed, I'll do it in the morning. I restarted my app and it didn't happen again. And I'm actually not sure it is a bug. If we will make that process easy and have that person on the other side not think twice before they report a bug, we'll get more bug reports. We'll show you at the end of this presentation how that works in TestFairy. TestFairy allows users to shake their phone, sketch on the screen, and hit the send button. It takes 3 seconds. If you will have a process that takes 3 seconds for a user to report a bug, they will do it before they go to bed. They will do it before they go back home, or if they just found now something and they don't want to forget, they'll send it to the R&D right now and continue with their tasks. Or my favorite is I forgot. So reporting bugs should be easy. It should be non-intrusive. It should have 0 friction, and it should be really fast. Now, if you don't want to use, if you want to use a replacement for that Jira form or the Google form, we would recommend using an embedded tool that pops up from the app itself. I saw many companies that built that in-house, and there are quite a lot of tools for that. And of course, TestFairy does a beautiful job around that. A classic bug report should contain a text description, should be able to include a screenshot with a graphic sketch, because some people will just write, it is not working. And we've all seen bug reports that are useless. Somebody said the app is not working. What am I going to do with it? It's not working. So if it's not working and I have a screenshot with a sketch that circle out that button and it says it's not working, okay, now I understand it. It's not working. Tracy is asking if TestFairy is part of Sauce Labs. Absolutely, yes. TestFairy joined Sauce last year. And except the text description and the screenshot, we want to be able to attach a video. And I've seen developers who said that if that bug report doesn't have a video, they will not have time for it today. They didn't say that they will not fix it. They said, I will not have time for that today. Because a bug with a video recording takes less time to process. Now, if I don't need to go to that desk, or in the last 2 years, that desk was in a different house, people are working from home. I don't want to go on a Zoom call with every bug report that I don't understand to understand from that person that works in the same city, or maybe they work in a different country or different continent. I want to see what happened there and just get to work. So if I'll be able to get a text description, screenshot, and a video, that will be fantastic. And of course, there are some cases where we saw that was super useful for teams that wanted to ask 1 or 2 questions, ask the user when they report that bug. That could be very useful. So just to sum it up, by making it easy to report bugs, we will increase the chances that that bug report that we're looking for will be reported. And that's the process that we're after, making it effective and getting as much information as possible. The second tip that I will talk about is make feedback meaningful. And we've already discussed that. Meaningful as possible. We're going to try to use tags. Tags are any text fields that can help the development team later on find information or understand the flow, or any breadcrumbs that we can put on the way. So any information that we can attach to a bug report automatically under the hood without the user doing anything, that'll be super useful. We will try to get that feedback assigned to the right person automatically. We will try to provide metadata for the ability to group bugs. Metadata and tags are kind of same family, but there is a little difference, but some teams will use both. And I mentioned screenshot, video, and breadcrumbs. Next in line is integration. In every team that the people on this call work in, there are tools, lots of tools. Sometimes we have too many tools, and I've seen that in so many companies. And the question is, which tool is the best for a good process? The answer is the tool that you're already using. Don't get new tools. If you're using Jira or Trello or the Microsoft Doc systems or the Google solutions or whichever, try to tag along a process that the team is already working on. Trying to get a team work with another tool, it's going to be a miserable failure. And we don't want to get enemies in the team just because we've added a new way to do things. We would want to do things in a way that the team is already used to that. By the way, Wim, are you with us? Not sure if you're here.
Yes, I'm still here.
I wanted to ask if you have any comments so far on the things that we've discussed.
I'm just wondering also for everybody here in the group, what kind of tools do they use? Maybe they can put it also in the Slack or in the chat. Just curious if there are tools that are new that we don't know that they exist here.
Yeah, bug systems, Rollbar, cool. Jira. Anybody using the Microsoft Azure DevOps? Excellent. I think that we have 2 Jiras, 3 Jiras, 4 Jira. Okay, we have a winner. So yeah, Jira is by far the market leader. However, I do know teams that would try to use other tools. But in any case, we use Jira as well in Sauce, and I'll show the Jira demo in a minute, and I'll show how we integrated with Jira and how we made that integration meaningful. Stan says Jira for sure. So that's more than just a Jira. And Andre says Jira with a sad smiley. I hear you, Andre. Integration is very important. And when we're talking about integration, we'll talk about issue tracking. It could be Jira or GitHub or the Microsoft bug systems or whichever. If we're talking about customer support, it could be Zendesk, it could be Intercom, it could be other tools. We have customers who take the bugs and send them directly to the customer support desk to analyze by the support team before they decide if that's a problem. And of course, the most useful or the most popular is Slack, where the classic integration would be Slack and Jira together. Jira is a tool that you'll use to be organized and log into Jira once a day or twice a week or every 2 hours. Depends on how you work, how closely you work with bug reports. And Slack is more for real time. So if you have a bug report and it's reported to Slack right now, you can start the discussion with the team and say, hey, Wim, look at this bug. It just happened. It was reported by Eyal. And I think that this is the thing that we're looking for. Let's investigate it right now, and let's look at the logs and the server and the client, and let's pick up the phone and get on a Zoom call or whatever. If we'll go to a Jira ticket, might be something that happened yesterday or the day before. I hear about Instabug, but we got rid of it. Okay, Testberry can help you replace that. And we have Instabug creating Jira tickets for more investigation. Yeah, this is definitely, it's a good tool. So there's one thing I would mention, and that's another slide that I stole from Wim's presentation. There's one thing that I would recommend not to do. Do not use email. Because email is, I wouldn't say email is the devil, but email is used for so many things. And if you end up with getting your bug reports and your meaningful information for development sent by email to your mailbox, it will probably be buried and not handled well. So as we saw on the chat here, most teams have a tool, Jira or tools like Jira. Use those tools for managing your issues. Next in line is the actual audience that is going to help us with beta. And this is very important. We need to find the right people, and one of two ways. First, there's the dog food example, and one of my next slides here mentions Groupon, which is a great case study that we can share with you later. Groupon is using Testberry for quite a few years for a never-ending, continuous cat food process, as they call it. And they use company employees for that. And every company employee that is using the Groupon app that is powered by Testberry will get an employee discount when they make orders through the app. So the users are incentivized to use the beta program app, and they help the company test the app on an ongoing basis. And surprisingly enough, the people that work in the company look exactly like the typical customer that will go on a Groupon app to look for a deal. So that's one aspect. If we talk about company employees, that's a beautiful asset that works great with almost every company that I talk to, and that helps get great results. If we're looking for external groups, I would definitely involve marketing tactics for getting the right people to the right beta group. And as I spoke to a startup that says, how am I going to find now 200 people that will help me test my whatever dog walking app? And I was brutally honest and told them, if you cannot find 200 people that will help you beta test your app, dude, you're in a serious problem. You're going to build a business that will try to sell to millions and you can't find 200 people. So that takes the beta testing team into their own kind of a startup. Like, you need to do a little bit of marketing, a little bit of outreach, and get the right people try out your products. So you can try forums, you can get social influencers, use social media. If you'll post on Facebook, I have a new version of my product and I'm looking for people on Android to help me test it. Can anybody help? I'm sure you'll get some friends that will try it out. If you put it on a forum that are not necessarily your friends, you might get a few strangers that will agree to try out your product. So it's important to get that forum that is relevant for your app. If you're working on a dog walking app, that will be very important to get to groups of dog lovers, and I'm a dog lover, by the way, that will try out your app, that will be relevant for this group. Next is encourage or even incentivize your audience to cooperate. As I mentioned before, the Groupon app, they give company discounts to company employees that will record bugs and use the app for help them test it. Another way is to work with that stranger and say, anybody that reports a bug will get a t-shirt or will get a coupon for coffee or whatever. I want to tell those users, they save a lot of money to the company. It's not a resource that is just nice to have. If we have a good beta testing process, it means that whenever we have a release, the next minute or an hour or during that day, we can have hundreds of people using random phones in random environments in different languages in different countries to try out our product. And that saves a lot of money for the QA, because once we go to the next step in our testing workflow, and of course, we talk a lot about automation and a lot about other ways for testing. If we know that there's a bug and we can fix that bug before the next step or during that next step, that can save us a lot of time. So this would be very important to make that audience cooperate and have them want to cooperate and improve our process. And this is the last tip in this list. And this is make that process continuous forever, ever, ever, ever. Meaning, if we have a beta group, we want that beta group to continue getting updates just as long as that beta group is willing to get those updates. At some point, we'll lose a few users, but we can get more coming in. And what I don't want to do is have those people use the beta group, the beta app, and then say, okay, the beta is over, please uninstall and get the app from the store. It was so hard for us to get those users start the beta testing that I don't want to lose them and try to get them again next time I have a version. I will keep them on the beta version, and it will be connected to my CI. And whenever there's a new release on Jenkins that is stable enough to go to the beta group, it will go to the beta group, and again, they'll use it. Sometimes this is just a version that is not very important. We just fixed the logo or the pricing or connected to a new server, whatever. I don't care. If I have a beta group that was using my app, let them continue using it. They might find something that I'm not expecting. I might be able to run an experiment with that group that I need some audience in another country or another device or things like that. I didn't ask that question, but how many of you already run a beta program in the company. Wim, what do you have to add so far?
Well, if I just go back to your previous slide, where you mentioned incentivize your audience to cooperate, I think we also miss one point here. And that's not only for your audience, but you should also encourage basically your company to start thinking about beta testing. Because one thing that a lot of people forget is that when you compare, for example, releasing a mobile application to production, if you compare that with a web application, then most of the managers think that it's as fast as web applications. That releasing your mobile application will be there within a few hours on the phones of the customers. And that's not what's happening. So you want to prevent basically getting bugs later on in the process. So you need to encourage your managers to use beta testing because it will prevent bugs. It will prevent releasing multiple times and waiting for multiple releases before they go to production. So that's what I wanted to add also.
We spoke about it the other day that one of the differences between web and mobile is the deployment time.
Yeah.
Where you release a new version, it will take you days until you see your audience adopting to the new version. So if you're running a beta test with a company that has 500 employees, and let's say that you have a great plan that 200 people actually join the beta process, the beta group, whatever, the beta testing group. If you release a new version, I would expect that in the next day you'll get 10, maybe 20, maybe 50 people that is using the latest version, but it will take 24 hours until they do that. And you might need to ask them, guys, there's a new version, please update. So there are lots of differences between the deployment stage and then sometimes the deployment and the people that install the new update are not the ones that I'm looking for, because we have a problem with Samsung S21. And we know that we have that many people on that version, but we're looking at the updates and we see that all the iPhone guys have updated and all the Pixel guys have updated, but the guys on the Samsung, for some reason, they didn't use the app yet. So it is not as easy as updating a web server and knowing, okay, from now on, everybody is on the new version. At this point, okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about TestFairy. And we're going to make it interesting. And I'm going to show you a QR code that allows you to download an app to your phone. This is an open source app that will share the code with you. So you can look at that later if you want. And we'll run a little experiment here to see how bug reporting can be done and how bugs can be pushed to Jira and then can be sorted. We'll run the actual process that shows you how easy it is to run a meaningful process. So, as I said before, I'm from TestFairy. And TestFairy is a startup that joined Sauce a little over a year ago. We're already part of the family and our products are heavily integrated into the system. You'll see that in the other sessions that the TestFairy SDK is included in RDC and lots of beautiful stuff. And TestFairy does quite a few things across the mobile lifecycle and helps teams solve lots of problems that mobile developers have. So it starts with session video recording. TestFairy can record your sessions and show you what that user did before there was a problem, before there was a crash, or before there was a bug report. So if somebody sends a bug report and says the app is not working, you can see the minute before they said something is not working, and you'll understand what happened there. This classic scenario of somebody says the app stopped working, and that happened to everybody. The app stopped working. Suddenly, it's not working as I expected. The first question that you would have to that person is, what did you do before? They don't remember. It was on Thursday. Today is Tuesday. it just stopped working. So if we'll have that video that shows what happened in the last minute, that'll be a lifesaver. I'll show you how TestFairy can help you with in-app bug reporting, allowing you to report bugs from within the app. You can shake your phone, sketching the screen, and hit the send button. App management allows you to send apps to users, app distribution. So you can upload your apps directly from your CI instead of using TestFlight, which is not always convenient for companies. You can use TestFairy, and TestFairy is much more convenient, and it integrates with all the Sauce products. So you have one dashboard that allows you to manage your apps for all your testing needs. Obviously, we have a real device cloud integration with the Sauce RDC that you're all familiar with. Crash reporting allows you to get crashes. I think that one of the next sessions is about backtrace. So backtrace is the best crash reporting tool in the world. TestFairy can also collect crashes, but backtrace will be definitely replacing the TestFairy crash stack. And we'll talk a little bit about remote support, about how TestFairy can do that. That's not related to beta testing. So let's go to the TestFairy dashboard now and see how that works. So this is the TestFairy dashboard. And what you see here is all the apps that I have in my account. For every app, I can take multiple actions. I can run the app on a real device. You all know the RDC capabilities. I will not spend time on that right now. I think that there are enough sessions on the new RDC features. If you haven't seen the new features, please look for that session. The new RDC is nothing but amazing. So we can talk a lot about that later. So TestFairy allows you to run your apps on a real device or in an emulator or simulator. It allows you to share your app with the user. So anybody that gets this URL can download the app in just one click, or you can send the app to users like you do with TestFlight or Hockey app or other tools. And you can manage all the versions that you have for every app. And for every version, you can get all the statistics. So it is very easy for you to manage versions and to manage apps. You see that this version is just the demo, and this one is for staging. You can create labels, and lots of teams can work on the same dashboard. They can put their apps in different folders with different permissions. We can talk about that on another day, but it will help you manage your assets. And then if there's an update, if there's a new version and somebody's using version 1 and a new version is released, they'll be able to see a message that a new version is available, and they can download it in just one click. This is a TestFairy session. What you can see here is what the user did while using your product. You can see where they touched the screen and what was their exact process of using the app. So if somebody clicked on Open from Gallery, we can see that there's a button here that says Open from Gallery. And the guys here that are into automation would be thrilled to see that you can get the view ID and the content description and the XPath. And on iOS, you'll see the accessibility hint and the accessibility identifier and all the beautiful stuff that you would want to see on an app in order to better understand what that user did. So if somebody clicked on the OK button here or on the color picker button, we know what exactly happened here. We'll get all the logs from the device. So imagine that you have that problem, and you'll be able to see the logcat or the NS log of that device before the problem that happened on Thursday. Today is Tuesday. We get those logs automatically. And then if somebody wants to report a bug, all they need to do is shake their phone, and then they can, like this user does, they can sketch on the screen and hit the send button, and that will turn into a beautiful Jira issue that contains all the information that I showed you here with the timeline, with the video, with all the information that we want. At this point, I want to make this session even more interesting, and we have prepared an app that will allow us all to understand how this process works, and we'll make it even interesting. let's say that the first person who manages to find where this app has a crash will get a t-shirt. I think that we have t-shirts. So so let's do that. And I'll be happy if you all can download this app. If you cannot scan this QR code, you can go to tsfr.io/SauceCon on your phone, or just scan this QR code and try to download the app. In the meantime, I'll answer a few questions that are here. First is, how can I shake a device at Sauce Labs? The answer is you cannot shake a device at Sauce Labs. However, the main difference between TestFairy and Sauce, TestFairy is completing the Sauce offering by the fact that TestFairy can run on a real device in the hands of a real person. So if you're running beta test with your teammates or your company employees or your friends from school, they'll use their real phones and then they can shake their phones. In the demo app that we've prepared for this demo, and I'll show it in a minute, we've added a button that simulates the shake, so I will show how this is done. I hope that this answers the question. Andre says, this looks leagues ahead of Instabug. I agree. I will say, except of being very proud of what we have here, and we are very proud of that. One of the slides that I showed, this one. What you see here is that TestFairy concludes of multiple products. And if you will have a better slide around Sauce Labs. Sauce Labs has virtual devices and real devices and API testing and crash reporting in the field with backtrace that you'll see in the next presentation. I think that they're right after us in 22 minutes. And TestFairy brings in quite a few solutions for session video recording and in-app bug reporting and app management. And you will not be surprised if you'll hear that more companies join Sauce later this year. It will happen. So the idea is to consolidate the tools and have one-stop shop for all your quality needs, so that a team that works with Sauce knows that they can test their APIs and their front end and have simulators and emulators and real devices, and the ability to shake the phone and report bugs from prod and so on. So yeah, that's definitely a difference from a tool that does one thing. They do it really well, but they do one thing. There's a question here from Tracy. Is the demo app available for iOS? We have a demo app for iOS. The answer is yes, but not for this session. Oh, I see that Wim already answered. Sorry, no. Yeah, so we have the source code. I can share the source code for the GitHub repo for the demo app, but it's not for this session. Sergio already found the crash. What do you know, Sergio? I need your address to send you a t-shirt. So we'll do that in private, and we'll just need your t-shirt size, and you're covered. That's the first thing that you look at. Okay, that's your unfair advantage. Okay, I think that we have quite a few people that downloaded the app now. And let's see if we can see something interesting here. I'll go to my TestFairy dashboard, and I'll see if I have sessions. And what do you know? We have some sessions from the US and from Ukraine. Go Ukraine! And we have from England and from Canada. And we have quite a lot of sessions. Now, first, let's look at this table here. It allows me to see in real time a list of all the sessions. Obviously, it's not very effective to look at this list and look for problems in that list. However, what I'll ask you to do, if you can, please shake your phones and then report a bug, or just provide some feedback. You'll see the feedback form. Let's see if we got some feedbacks. So we got a feedback from a user called Wim Sellers. He's in the Netherlands, and he has a feedback for us. Where can I order this bag for real? Oh my God. And Wim, that was a beautiful question. We'll get you a bag. So what you see here, we got a few feedbacks. Let's click on this link and go to Jira. And this feedback was pushed to Jira. We have a video here showing what the user did. We have a screenshot that that user sent us. We have a timeline explaining step by step what that user did. In that timeline, we have some network calls for mydemoapp.net. By the way, when did you see that the new domain is now included in the demo? So
No, really great.
The client side sends now real requests to the server. And so we actually understand this is a lifesaver for a developer that goes into Jira and start analyzing a problem that came from a user that they probably never heard of and they don't know that person, but they have everything they need. Now, this timeline here, okay, let's make it interesting. I was looking for the fields in Jira and I saw that nothing is automatically populated. So what I'm going to show you is, we'll do it in real time. I'll go to the integration of backtracking of Jira custom fields, and I'll look for this field. I'm doing it really fast. This is not teaching you how to do it. We can share more information later. And what I'm going to do now is go to the integration of my account. And what I want is that every Jira ticket that is opened will automatically populate the device OS into the right field in Jira. So there's a field here, OS. I'll put here device OS, and let's also put here device model, device type. It's called here, doesn't matter. And let's also put here the IP address. The IP address is this field. For those of you who understand what I'm doing, this is great. If not, we can actually share more information later. If anybody can send another piece of feedback right now, so we will see that these new fields actually took place. So the last bug I have is from Stan. Let's refresh and see if we have a new bug after I change the settings. Or I can do that on my phone. Oh, we have something from Oliver at example.com. Oh, it's still pending. It will be pushed to Jira in a second. Okay, now it's already in Jira. We will open this ticket, and if everything went well, and everything did go well, we know that this bug is from a Google Pixel 3 XL from this IP address. So what we just did here, think of how much time that can save you, where all the fields in Jira can automatically be populated. I want all the Google bugs to say Google in the right field in Jira. So then if I'll filter the bugs in my Jira reports, I can look for that Samsung S21 bug that I was referring to earlier, because that will automatically populate that Jira ticket. Let's look for another bug here. Okay, there are enough of those. We didn't mention crashes, but let's see if we have interesting crashes from today. So for the past hour, we have 15 crashes of the same crash. And if we look at all the sessions that had this crash, those sessions came from quite a few people with different devices. We have a Google Pixel and another Google Pixel and a Samsung, and they're from different countries and from the US, and again, go Ukraine, and UK, and other countries that are here. So at this point, any questions from the audience? Not at the moment. Wim, what do you think we should do next before? Oh, I see that you had the sample code for the GitHub repos for my demo app iOS, my demo app Android, and my demo app React Native. How does it take care of duplicate bugs? That's a great question. So there is a way that we can automatically populate the field of the actual function that was active in the screen, like the activity or fragment or view controller. So you would be able to know that this bug was reported from the login page or from the shopping cart or from the checkout page. So we know from which area in the app that bug report was sent. We don't know if that was failed to log in, I cannot log in is not working. This will go to Jira, and then you might have duplicate bugs. But these are problems that will not solve on our side, but there are tools in Jira that allow you to deduplicate bugs, and we can send recommendations for that later. Another question that we've been asked is the difference between TestFairy and TestFlight. So first of all, TestFlight is a tool that is made by Apple, comes out of the box. It comes in one size, and it's an Apple product that can be used only in one way. TestFairy can be integrated and can be customized to fit your process. So if you're using Okta, we can integrate with Okta and get all the groups from Okta and make sure that the permissions for every app will be based on the actual permissions in your company. So people that are in the R&D can access this app, and people that are in marketing can access another app, and people that are in ops cannot access any app. So that can automatically propagate. Of course, TestFairy is for both iOS and Android. And TestFairy comes with all the beautiful features that we mentioned before. So just app distribution, yes, TestFlight has a great solution for iOS devices. However, if you need something that is bigger for thousands of users that can incorporate enforce corporate policies and include all the features for advanced beta testing, that could be useful. Any other questions? There's one more thing that I wanted to show before we wrap up. It's already 12 minutes before the end of the hour. We'll give you a few minutes break before the next session. And that is remote support. Remote support is a process that looks very similar to the beta testing process that we've described, except that it runs in live traffic with real users that use your real app in the real world. And the use case here is a bit different. We have a user that says the app is not working, I cannot complete my purchase. And they contact support. Support gets back to them and says, I have no idea what you're talking about. Would you mind going to the help menu and click on report a bug? And that can activate TestFairy. The user will see a disclaimer. You're about to be recorded for quality assurance purposes. Are you okay with that? The user will say yes, and then support will see the problem that the user is having in real life with their phone. And they'll say, I see the problem, it looks like you're trying to do this and that. This use case came from quite a few customers that needed to use TestFairy in prod. And we got two fun facts from a major customer that says, it's a large carrier, US carrier, that said that it takes them 4 round trips of emails until they understand a problem from the field, and only 10% of users reply to emails. So just think of how many users should have a problem until you understand that problem in support, and then how much time it takes you to escalate to the R&D. In the meantime, you have some kind of a storm in Twitter, or people talking about how bad your app is, and you didn't even understand what's going on. So what remote support can do is help you shorten the cycle, the time from a defect to response in the company. If there's a problem in the field, you'll know about it much faster and you'll be able to escalate and respond much faster. The main difference between beta testing is that in beta, we would recommend recording users because they're company employees and they should know that recording is taking place. And remote support, we wouldn't recommend recording users in advance. Instead, once they click on the button and it's proactive, they will see a disclaimer, you're about to be recorded. Please say yes, they'll say yes, and recording will start. Support will see it in real time. We'll be able to escalate in real time. And that can save a lot of money to your company. Tracy is asking, can you, sensitive data? Yes, absolutely. Thank you for asking that. At docs.testfree.com, under the security section, there's an article about hiding sensitive data. And here's an example. On the left side, you have a credit card form with name, credit card, and CVV. On the right side, you have these fields blacked out. So how did we do that? Just in one command, you call hide view, and then this field will be blacked out and we will not be able to see it. Nobody will be able to see it. It's done on the client side, and the screenshot is blacked out on the client side. It's uploaded to the server, and it cannot be undone. This is one way to hide information. Another way to hide information is to use our end-to-end data encryption. Test-Fairy sessions can be encrypted with your private keys. What you can do is use OpenSSL to create a public key and a private key. Use the public key on your apps. Initialize the SDK with the public key. And the private key, keep it in your team so nobody has it. Don't ever send it to us or anybody else other than your teammates. And then once you log in, you'll need to enter the private key in order to decrypt the session. Wim, if you have a minute to go to Test-Fairy questions on Slack, there's a document at the top of the channel that has a few links. There's a Loom video about remote support, and there's a Loom video about end-to-end encryption. These videos are public, so we can share them with customers. If you want to put them in the chat, that can be fantastic.
Yeah.
Another question. Can you turn on device cameras without user knowing it? Absolutely not. First of all, we cannot do it. And second, even if we could, we wouldn't do it because that would backfire. I wouldn't recommend anybody to do anything like that because it can get everybody into trouble. So the answer is absolutely not. We have automated tests cases in UiPath which use real devices at Sauce Labs. Can we use Test-Fairy for bug reporting if one of the test cases fails? Or will your shaking feature only work if you test manually? That's from Michael Zach. I suggest we'll take that question offline because there are a few things that are now done in Sauce that can solve that problem. So the answer is yes, and reporting from Test-Fairy from RDC is a bit tricky, but it will get into the product. So Michael, if you can drop us a note after the call, that will be fantastic. These are the Loom videos for the remote support and for end-to-end encryption. There was another video that we mentioned, remote support, end-to-end encryption. I think that this is it. Yeah, this is okay. So I hope that this can help understand how to use those features. We still have 1 more minute, so I can give you 5 minutes break after this session. Any other questions or any other thoughts?
I think it was a really clear session here about what you could do with beta testing and also some best practices for that. So thanks for that. And maybe we should give everybody then the 5-minute pit stop again, so they can get a cup of coffee. Michael can get a beer, like he mentioned before, and we can then prepare for the last part of the
Yeah, and Sergio, I owe you a T-shirt. Please drop us a note after this call. We promised a T-shirt. You know what? We don't have that many people here. Let's get everybody a T-shirt. What do you say, Wim? Can we promise that? I think that the answer is yes. We don't have that many people, and we have too many T-shirts. Drop us a note. We'll send you a T-shirt. We'll find a way to do it.
Yeah, awesome.
Thank you so much, everybody. It was great talking, and hope to see you soon. See you later.
See ya.
I'm waiting for Pilar to jump in and say that we'll keep that active, right? The next session is starting in 4 minutes.
Yeah, it's just starting in 4 minutes, and I thought I saw that Vincent was already there.
Let's bring in Vincent to have a teaser for what's happening after the commercial, so we'll not lose the audience. For, they're going to have a bio break.
And there he is.
Oh, there's Vincent.
Hello. Does my audio
Vincent,
actually work?
Yes.
Maybe.
Your audio works.
All right.
The stage is all yours.
Excellent. Well, thank you much. Well, I will not mess with that pit stop because it is important.
Awesome.
We're also going to take a pit stop now.
So the stage is yours, and see you later. Wim, was great having you here.
Yeah, same for you here. And,
see you later. Bye-bye.
Excellent. I will open the space again in like 3-4 minutes. So talk to you guys soon. All right. That was my initial test if the sharing YouTube videos thing would work, and it looks like it did. Maybe. Cool. So I am not too familiar with the Hop-In platform, so I'm trying to see how I see all of you people. Oh, there you are. Excellent. All right. Well, thanks for joining the third session of this series. I hope that you all enjoyed the rest of it. And my name is Vincent Lussenberg, obviously. I'm with Sauce Labs' Backtrace product. And if technology cooperates, I will be joined by my VP of product, Jason, who will help with this workshop. Maybe something just happened, so maybe he just entered the chat. Anyways, we'll see. I'm going to connect with him, take a look if he is able to make it in, and I'll be back in a minute or two. So hang on tight. Right. I think we're back, and Jason is here as well, I think. Welcome, Jason. So let me go ahead and share my screen and see if that all works. Okay, well, that's wonderful that it works. I only cannot really see you guys anymore, so let me try to do this in a slightly different way. All right, exciting stuff. So can someone in the chat let me know if my screen is sharing correctly? Excellent. Thank you, Wim. Let's get going while Jason is making his way in here as well. So as I mentioned, my name is Vincent Lussenberg. I'm a technical product manager for Sauce Labs' Backtrace product. And I'll be joined by Jason Davids, who's our VP of product. And we'll take you through a workshop of testing in production, getting started with mobile crash and error reporting, where we all encourage you to integrate Backtrace's mobile SDKs. I hope that you all took a look at the prerequisites for the course. So we'll go through that first. So an intro, a little bit of background on error monitoring and crash reporting in production. We want to start hacking as quickly as possible. So the prerequisites here, and here the ability to build an Android or iOS app using Xcode, Android Studio, or another IDE. So you won't really get a ton of mileage out of this workshop if you don't have an app or don't know how to build an app. It's kind of in your intermediate level. I will, of course, go through that. I will start with a video showing how to integrate, and I can do the live integrations as well. Tell you a little bit more about Backtrace as well. So I hope some of you actually brought your own app, right? I have 2 demo apps that we can use, one for Android, one for iOS. So it's not a big deal if you don't. What you do need is access to a Backtrace instance. So if you don't have one now, they will be provisioned basically live for you. So if you go to register.backtrace.io, you can quickly sign up. You create your own subdomain, and that means you can log in. And that is the portal where your errors will be sent towards. I will, of course, show you an example of that. While building apps, it is also, of course, very important to run the apps on an actual device. So this is a little bit different compared to Android versus iOS. But if you run crash reporting, maybe crash reporting on these different devices, it works a little bit different if you're running on an emulator than if you're running on a real device. Crash reporting, by and large, is focused to work as it should on the real devices and not on the emulators, because those are always dev environments, right? So if you don't have access to a real device and you only have a simulator that you usually run your app on, you can sign up for a Sauce Labs free trial at saucelabs.com/signup, and that will give you access to a real device that you can run your app on. If there's any problems with that, we have staff on standby that can help out. So let us know in the chat if there's anything that's going on there. So we have a couple of outcomes defined here. So what do we want you guys to learn here? So first of all, we, of course, want to talk about the why behind. So the learning outcome is knowing why you would want to adopt error and crash reporting, what it helps you with. But also I have the know-how to capture, which is the integration of the SDKs, as well as prioritize, resolve the issues across the entire software lifecycle. So we're gonna talk a little bit about development, beta, production, and what the differences will be between those. Roll out new features with confidence, ensuring crash-free statistics are at the right level before a full release. So some of the things that help you to see how your different released versions are doing. So those are some of the metrics that are baked into the SDKs here. And also quickly respond to top instability errors before they impact more users is really captured on the first bullet point as well. But that's what we're here to do. To set the stage, really want to take a look at this overview. And if I have one more click, and there's a fair chance that during the workshop, the previous workshop, you've already seen that. But we are going to operate on the bottom right corner here. So with Sauce, we focus on that entire life cycle. So you see all the different practices and products of Sauce Labs basically displayed here. So building a stable, high-quality app has a lot to do with, of course, your testing, live testing, API testing, doing that like in your your development and test and staging environments. What we'll be looking at today is way more focusing your beta tests, so real users, real devices out there, and error reporting even in production. So if you break things in production or things break in production, that there's a good feedback loop back to your development, if that makes sense. Like I said, the error reporting we're focused on is supposed to be fully functional in production. So these are SDKs that are built to be integrated during like your production lifecycle. They don't really take a lot of resources in the app, et cetera, but it is very useful to incorporate them in beta tests and even in your automated tests as well. So you have correlation. For example, if you see an error happening on production, you could spot, oh, that's an error that we saw during beta tests as well, or even during my automated tests, which helps prioritizing, knowing how to fix that, and maybe gives you important clues on, oh, I see the comment that Darshak is only seeing the title slide of the presentation. Is everyone just seeing the title slide of the presentation, or is it just them? If someone can confirm that.
Good. Current slide here.
Okay, excellent. So, Darshak, maybe refresh your screen. I hope that helps. Okay, thanks, Win, thanks, Jason. And at least I know that I'm talking about the right thing here. Wonderful. Where was I? I was talking about correlations, embedding it, making sure that the data that you see can be fed back into your development lifecycle, into regression tests as well. So where the other workshops were mainly, like, not all of them, but earlier in the lifecycle, vast majority of Backtrace, the Backtrace project is really focused on beta test, error reporting, and error monitoring in production, clicking into analytics as well. So I hope that is helpful to set the stage, that you guys have a little bit of a feeling of where all of this, like, particularly is supposed to live, at least. And really, because we have an hour, we really want to get hacking. It's a workshop, so anyone that is in the ability to integrate that with us. I'll quickly go back to the prerequisites again. So make sure that you have your app. If you don't have your app, I have a link to an example app that you can check out in a little bit. Have your Xcode or Android Studio ready to go. Make sure that you're logged into your Backtrace instance, and make sure that you have a real device. So these were parts of the workshop prerequisites. So let's keep going here. Now. Excellent. I was apparently at the wrong chat, so thanks, Susie, for reminding me. Excellent. Cool. So what I want to ask, and if you can quickly reply in, let me just make a poll here. Because I am curious, how many of you all are doing Android and how many are doing iOS? Why can I not publish? All right. Apparently, I do not have the rights to create a poll, which is great because I had it earlier, but that's fine. I'm just curious who of you is going to work on an iOS app and an Android app, to just get a feeling on the room. How many people are on iOS? Okay, we do both. Both. Okay. Because in this workshop, the aim is to actually, like, integrate. You can follow along and integrate an app live. So the moment that you would want to do that is possible. I'll tell a little bit more about that. But let's actually talk about what the slide is showing. So what we're beginning with is focusing on reducing your MTTD, which means your mean time to detection. And our customers are seeing that goes down as much as 90%. So the focus is for your mobile apps that we to capture your errors, hangs, and crashes, and to have them collected automatically. So we are going to work with the low-code open source SDKs that we have available for Android and iOS, which the integration is, of course, going to look slightly different. So we're going to look at both of them. What both of these SDKs do is they collect the occurrence and relevant context for handled exceptions, unhandled exceptions, hang crashes, and more events if you would want to capture that, and capturing like underlying events as well. This all is scalable. So the moment that you use the Sauce's Backtrace product, like we handle millions of reports a day. Popular examples that I usually name are some of our gaming customers that around lunchtime submit 200 million error reports in 48-hour windows, and we have technology to scale. We are, I assume, not going to submit millions of reports in this workshop. So to integrate the SDKs, and this is why I asked the question just now, you will have to choose your fighter now. Are you going to go for iOS on Android? I see in the chat that the majority of the people use both. For the sake of the workshop and seeing that we have about an hour, I would suggest going for one or the other. I have two example apps shared down below, and I've pointed in this this link basically, and I can post them on the chat as well. Copy link address. So these are the specific commits that don't have the Backtrace integration in there as well. The advantage is their Git repository, so you can peek ahead. The commits that come after that actually do have the integration defined. So if you want to check out a later version and do less work, that's completely fine. So those are those two links. Make sure that you're logged into your Backtrace instance, which you can do here. Make sure that if you're using the Sauce Real Device Cloud, that you're logged into that as well. So that is here. And then we have both of the SDKs, which I will drop in the chat as well, just to have them. And the setup, which we will go through. Of course, this will be shared after the session, but now like it's easy clickable, basically, that all of that is available. Yeah, Jason, did you?
I just posted another chat. I think in the prerequisites it was defined, but in terms of the languages that you're writing your apps in, it'd be interesting to understand that as well. Unfortunately, the poll only allows one choice at a time.
There we go.
Yeah, and the point here was also to indicate with these SDKs that we've got Java Kotlin support and Swift Objective-C, and it's useful to understand if you're using other cross-platform languages, as we have support in various places for different languages.
I also see that Susie added the poll. Thank you, Susie. Are you using Android and iOS? So by all means, please answer that one as well. So I see majority iOS, and I see a bunch of React Native. So that's cool. All right, I'm getting valuable data here. So thanks for submitting that stuff. Cool. So what I'm gonna do, and what I understand that this works better if I do it through this direct link. Let's see if this still works. No, because let me just share that video if technology wants to cooperate. Copy. So I don't know exactly how this shows up for you guys. I muted it on my end because otherwise you're going to hear two of me, which is going to be annoying. I also don't know if I pause it, it pauses for you guys as well. So that is a technology question. But what I specifically wanted to do is go through the integration here, how that specifically looks. So let me get rid of this. So if someone can confirm that what's actually being displayed is if I pause, does it pause for the audience as well? Or do you just get the video and all right, excellent. Wonderful. So that is good to know. So what we're going to go through is to take a look at Android first. So how does it look to integrate the Backtrace SDK into to Android? So what we really need to do here is just add a dependency, right? So again, if you guys are following along, have this open in Android Studio. Let me pause it here again. All that really needs to be done is you need to make sure that the minimum SDK version is set to 21 and that you import the Backtrace library. So this video shows version 3.10. That is not the latest version that we have. So make sure to replace that with the latest version. And I actually have it open here. So for your convenience, I can. No, I cannot copy paste that. Well, that would have been really nice if I could have. Let me just find it right here. This is basically the import that you would have to do in Gradle. Let's keep going. That will download our library, synchronize everything that we need from this. And what we can then do is import the Backtrace client. So that's located in that library, obviously. So let me pause here again. So this documentation, or basically this overview that you see, which I can momentarily share as well, is something that you will find in your Backtrace settings. So again, in the URLs that I shared, there's documentation. But what it comes down to in your Backtrace instance, if you go to project settings and then integration guides, you will basically see this code to be copy-pasted. So I think that if I share my screen, I stop the video. So I want to go through the video and then show that live. Just want to show the end-to-end first. So let's keep going. There's a couple of options here that I can talk about more, right? So some of the things that we do is native errors. So the moment that, for example, you have a NDK library in there, and there is some kind of like problem that happens in a native library like that, we can capture that information as well. Hangs, ANRs, things like that can all be captured. We can capture unhandled exceptions as well. So this is what I was talking about earlier when I showed that slide, which now I can't see because I can easily switch back between screen share and video, but capturing the right content and the right context, right? So this makes sure that all of this information is captured. You see some database settings as well. Sake of what we're talking about now is not that important, but it has something to do with that even if your app doesn't have internet connection right at that moment, it can still store the error reports and share it later when it's on Wi-Fi. It's important for mobile devices, obviously. So let's keep going. So the Backtrace exception handler is the thing that captures the unhandled exceptions. Wonderful, wonderful. So there's various ways of getting additional information to the Backtrace client. And this is what I'm like showing. I really hope that you're not hearing my audio twice. That would really suck, but let me know if you do. Right here, we have an obvious problem. This will trigger a divide by zero exception. And if we want to explicitly catch that and add some additional metadata, we can just simply do it in a try catch and then explicitly send that exception in a backtrace report. So normally that's just not really how you would do it, right? It's you can do that in callbacks as well. So something that when a report is sent that you can add additional code. But what the focus here is what I want to show is that it's easy to add additional context if you want to. So by adding custom attributes or maybe adding even like attachments or something like that. So it's easy like that. So if we look at the demo app, and that's the app that I shared, obviously, and how would that look? It looks like this. It has a next previous to show you the moment that you click on hang, and then you would do next previous. It doesn't do anything because you guessed it, it's hanging. That is information that's captured, then that's sent automatically to Backtrace. Obviously, we have a crash button and an error button as well, and they send different types of crash information to Backtrace. Switching to iOS. First, before I go on, does that make sense for Android so far? If there is anyone that is trying this integration to do this live integration, know that Jason, I assume that you can directly ping him, and he will answer any questions in the chat that come up, anything that happens with that integration. And let's see, I have all the relevant collateral pulled up as well. So depending on how many questions we get, I guess that you guys are probably pretty tired after 2 workshops. So there's also, I always have the ability to show that live in my development environment as well, so that I can just like try out different things, see the data that comes in. Anyways, but without further ado, let's continue with iOS. So iOS, our integrations are right now CocoaPods. So all that you need to do is define a pod file. That's what you see on the background there. So our pod is called Backtrace, big surprise. And if you make sure that you install the latest CocoaPod version, and then you do a pod install, all the scaffolding will be generated, or the pod would be added to the Xcode workspace that you already have. So the moment that you open that, what you will see now is that there's pods in there as well. Just like for Android, we do need to add some initialization code. Like the library is there, but you need to throw information in there to initialize that and to point it to the instance that in the prerequisites should have been created. So that looks very similar to the Android example. So what we see is that there is an endpoint that's sent there, which can be done in 2 different ways. Right now, it's sent directly to an instance, where there's CDOS3. That would be your instance right there. And this is the token. Again, when I shared or stopped the video, I will go to the Backtrace console, show you exactly where you can find that. Right. So let's keep going. Oh, for the rest, this configuration is default. So that's what you see if you go to the integration guides, which I will show to you later as well. So the moment that there, and of course we need the right imports, which is Backtrace and Backtrace_BO crash reporter. Once that's done, that means the moment that app will crash, it will automatically report that information. Just like for Android, we can explicitly catch an error as well. So you see, I'll do catch here. You see that there's the ability to, in addition to the error, to add attachments as well, additional attributes, things like that. Let me reiterate that that this is more for demo purposes to see how you add metadata to a report. How you would do that in an actual app is, of course, in more like a callback situation, because you don't want references to Backtrace all over your app. So you generally have one specific location where all these exceptions are handled, and we have callbacks that allow you to do something for every report, right? So if you just want for every unhandled report to send something additional, add an attachment, add a specific a log file or a screenshot or something like that. It's exactly what you would be able to do right there. So let's keep going. If you built this app, and in this case, I am running it, as you see, on an emulator. So actually, secretly, it's not really reporting the crashes, but it is showing how it would look if you click the crash button, and that's the app just disappears. But to repeat again, for this integration, the way that Apple made it, on emulators, you will not get the crash reports because that's all kept in Xcode, basically. So this only works on real devices by design. If you're playing around with that, that is kind of important to keep in the back of your head, because otherwise you'll start pulling your hair out because you don't see errors showing up. It doesn't work on emulators. Even if you do it on a real device and you have it connected to your laptop, make sure that you do it in release mode and that it's signed in release mode. Otherwise, you have the same situation. If you're in a development profile, not the same errors would show up. This is also the reason that this SAUS Real Device Cloud is really, really helpful there, because that means that you can always very easily export that app, which I can show you as well, and run it on the SAUS environment. I don't think that, let's see. Now, let me not press the wrong button, but this should have stopped the video. Any questions on iOS before I continue? I do see that the majority of you guys chose iOS as the thing that you will want to integrate with. So that's cool. No other questions in the chat, I believe.
Yeah, let us know if you got any issues gaining access to the system. We see a few that have signed up, so we can definitely support you logging into your .sp.backtrace.io instance. Now you're muted, Vincent.
You can't lip read? Come on. Anyways, it should be good now. Let me try share my screen again. Let me now do a specific window, because that does allow me to be a little bit more flexible. So if someone can confirm, probably Jason, if you can just see if it's showing up. Yeah, okay, excellent. All right. So we are at the Backtrace console, the web console now. So in the interest of time, I took you through the capture. The capture was the integration with SDKs. Again, I have Xcode and Android Studio pulled up. Any specific questions that I can answer, I can live do that. I can show that. I will probably, if we have time, show you like a full export to the SAUS cloud and like to run that app. But I do want to focus on showing the entire end-to-end. So assuming that the integration with the SDK on the backend was successful, the moment that an event happens on one of these apps, for example, this one, what will happen is these reports will be reported and collected by Backtrace and deduplicated. So what we see, for example, is that that there's about 6,700 errors in this specific project, the native mobile demo, but there's only like 5 underlying problems, and this is of course because it's done with this demo app, and the demo app has a couple of problems built into it. So it's not a really big surprise that we only have 5 problems. But what is a surprise, or at least very nice, is that these have automatically been deduplicated for you. So that is something that Backtrace does for you. So if we quickly go, and I'll create a little bit of context for that. So it does automatic deduplication across tens of thousands of devices. So that's one thing. We also have multiple platforms in one overview, which is something that I want to show you. I mean, it's already kind of obvious because you see the iOS and Android tags, but there's ways to filter for that as well. So I can say, hey, I only want to see iOS, or I only want to see Android. If you have any server-side components, they could feed into the same project as well. So what does that do? It gives you really powerful overview on issues that are happening across both iOS and Android. We have workflow integrations as well. So I'll try to like go through this quickly to make sure that we answer any questions and show more nitty-gritty integration details as well. But integrations with Jira. So a Jira ticket can be created automatically when a new group of errors is reported. And there's a lot of details in there as well, so that it integrates with like the tools that you're using today. For example, as well, Slack and other tools like that. So we have metrics that help prioritization, because what are we talking about? We're talking about prioritizing issues. Like these problems are coming in. Of course, this is an example app, so the problems that we're seeing are really not that interesting. It's pretty obvious what the problem is, but imagine this being your production app. And that means that you're getting probably a lot of noise. So what we really want to see is that prioritization is more painless. And what is really important for that is the metrics that we use there. So we already touched about the deduplication. Obviously, that's very important to see. If I switch back real quick, that I have one error that happens, or two errors that happens more than the rest. So that could be the reason for me to like hone in on that. But it could also be related to the fact like these both are iOS. So maybe I just have more iOS users than Android users, right? So how do I know for sure how to prioritize that? So these crash-free metrics do give you information on that. So we record not only the errors that happen, but also the successful launches. So these, what we see here is that basically for 99 or like 98.3% of the launches, this problem doesn't occur. So actually, it looks that my app is pretty healthy. We see that for quit. So these are my unique users as well. So I can see that this problem only affects 0.7% of my users. There's different ways of showing that in like more a granular way, which helps me prioritize. This overview shows at a sort of aggregated way how many error-free users and error-free application launches there were. So it's very obvious here that we have a problem in the 2.1.0 version of this demo app, right? Because the order of the amount of errors that we have is a lot larger. In the releases overview, we can see that even more clear. I mean, this is basically the same graph, but here you can see the user adoption basically against how many error-free application launches and uses there are. And I see for the 2.1.0 version, it's quite a bit more low. So to go back to this, we've seen the percentage and the amount of affected versus problem-free users and sessions. That is essential to see beyond just the absolute numbers of the problem occurring, that you have context. Like, is this problem actually worth prioritizing, right? In this situation, because 99% of my users are problem-free, maybe I don't really even want to do something with any of these problems, especially if they just affect just a few users. But there are situations that you do want to dive in a little bit deeper. And that is, we'll go through really quick. And let me repeat again. This does that for Android and iOS at the same time, right? So it's cross-cutting. The moment that I switch to the Explore view, the Explore view is really meant to allow you to slice and dice your data in a different way, to like check that prioritization from different perspectives. So what we see, first of all, is sort of the same as the triage view, right? We see the fingerprints, so the unique identifiers of these deduplicated groups, and we see the unique sessions that were affected. Let's group it by a different way. For example, we already know that there's something going down with that version. So by selecting all these errors and saying, now I want to just group that by application version, we basically see that appearing on the fly, right? We see that a lot more sessions are affected by problems for this 2.1.0 version. So we see a higher number of absolute problems and a higher percentage. If I pull in the unique user information, we see that as well, that the double amount of users is being affected. But this is kind of interesting in a way, because we have about 5 to 6 times more errors, but only 2 times as much users that are being affected. So that already gives me a little bit of information of what's going on. I can pull on different information. And again, this is stuff that is reported by our SDKs by default. Like, for example, process age. If I make a bin view, that basically shows me across these different errors when do the errors occur. What we see for the HIS210 version, it just happens all the way at the beginning. Now, this is another piece of important information that allows me to know what's going on with my application. I can keep digging into certain things. For example, I know that something is related to user. So let's focus on hostname here. And if I create a distribution of the hosts affected with this problem, I see for the problematic version that something else happens. So there's actually, what is it, 1, 2, 3, for 12 or something like that, I can't count, versions that are affected quite a bit compared to all the other versions where there's like 1 or 2 or 3 problems occur. We see that the host name in this case is obfuscated. So we do see that it's iOS and this is Android, but we don't see the actual username. This is something that's not done by standard by our SDK, because depending on company to company, you might want to do that hiding of user information in a different way, but it is something that's possible. So you can select which attributes are shown in which way. So this way, what's showing up isn't really showing like Finn's iPhones or Bob's iPhone or something like that, but it is globally unique. So that does mean that it points to a unique device. I just don't know information about what that user is. So cool. So that's the grouping that I mentioned. I'm going to skip the flame graph in the interest of time. I want to quickly look at zooming in on individual sessions as well. So the moment that you have all this information, focusing on an individual session is also possible. And by the moment that I go for an individual session and I select a list, what I basically see is through that user's journey, I see all basically the errors that happen to that user over time. The reason that I'm saying this is that sometimes you do want to zoom in on an individual user. Maybe it's an important user for you. It's an influencer, or it's someone that spends a lot of money in your app. So you have the ability with these SDKs to look at a granular approach, like seeing thousands of errors, but looking at the individual ones as well. So let's keep going. Quickly want to show as well as like, okay, this has been all nice. I see how I can capture the errors. I can see how I can prioritize my problems, but how do I fix them? So I'll fly through this in the interest of time. The debug view shows me all that metadata that's captured by my app. So we see this Backtrace demo app. So this is the iOS version. We see information about the stack trace. Some of the information in this case needs to be retrieved by uploading symbols. So that gets like a little technical, but the app builders amongst you are very well aware the moment that you build an app, you generally end up with a bunch of debug symbols. Without those debug symbols, whatever you see in this call stack isn't as powerful as it otherwise is. You can upload the symbols automatically to Backtrace, and we show you a symbolicated stack. Let me just, for comparison, also show you an Android one. Let me just, I'm in one session, so of course I'm only seeing iOS ones. Let me here. Well, this is an example of an Android Java error, where symbols, of course, wouldn't be necessary for. This is actually the arithmetic exception that we entered when we saw that video just now. There's linking with source code as well. Let's see, and this is like actually within my app, so I can click on that, and this actually links to that that Git repository that you guys would have been able to clone. So you have the ability to link that directly to your Git repo. In this case, it's of course very obvious what the problem is, but there are situations where it's not quite as obvious. This works for C++ and stuff like that as well. Breadcrumbs are events that are automatically collected. Those are both user events and things that happen on the system. Like, for example, if these paused, there's a memory event. So this can have important information for me to deduce basically what the user was doing, how he got to that, right? Sometimes just having the call stack is not as valuable as knowing how that user got there. So you have the ability to capture these breadcrumbs as well. There's a lot of attributes. So that's all the metadata that's captured, which has information on like what kind of device it is, what kind of iOS or Android version. You see the custom attribute that we added here as well. So you can add your custom stuff. Metadata on memory, like portrait, landscape, all of these things of the device are captured. Hostname, GUID, things like that as well. So this is very important to be able to solve this problem the moment that you're looking at it. So what we're all focused on is that a developer doesn't have to get additional information from that user. Doesn't have to like try to get in contact with that. Hey, which screen were you on? What were you doing? All of that information is captured automatically. Cool. Let's see if I touched on most of that. There's some things that I could go into deobfuscation and symbolication. Right now, I'll just mention that we do that. So if you use ProGuard or something like that, we can deobfuscate it as well. You can see attachments there. We've seen the breadcrumbs, user actions, and system events. We've seen the source code integration. I haven't explicitly shown you the scrubbing of the personally identifiable information. I saw that in the previous screen, but know as well as information that's contained in a crash dump of Android, we can scrub that automatically as well. So that's sometimes a concern for the larger customers, that like even in these debug dumps, there can be information that you just don't want in your system, and we can clean that up. Cool. So that gives us basically a full, let me just close this again, loop through the system. So what have we seen? We've seen the capturing. How do you get your SDKs embedded in your app? How do you set up the URL? Where do you get the token from? Oh, by the way, I'll just show a little bit more on that. We've seen the moment that you have data in that environment, how do you prioritize it? What kind of operations that you can do on that data? And finally, if I want to resolve it, how do I get to the information that actually contains whatever the developer need to fix that actual problem? Cool. So by going through that, I reminded myself that I promised you guys to show really quickly where that information is. So I mentioned that before. It's mentioned in the documentation as well. But if you go in the top right in your Backtrace instance, project settings, integration guides, and in this case, I'll arbitrarily select iOS. It has that information, the credentials that we saw in that app. They're just right here for me, so I can copy paste them just like that. And this would be available for Android, of course, as well. So let me stop there. Any questions before ideally, this is as interactive as possible, so I can go and do and show anything that is like as a specific question, even about the integration. Excuse me. And in lieu of that, what I can show as well is how you get, for example, an iOS app built and really quickly running in the real device cloud, so that we can see that final step of actually deploying that app and getting information. Cool. So I don't see any specific questions. Oh, I do see one. Thank you, Andre. Jason, you want to take that? I can use a little break.
Yeah, take a glass of water. Great question, and glad that you have some experience with some of these other crash reporting tools for mobile devices. The main benefits that our customers tell us that they get over Crashlytics and Firebase, three main things. One, the full cross-platform support. The current understanding is that we still have separate projects for iOS and Android when you're running in Crashlytics. So that gives you kind of two places to go for looking for that information. With Backtrace, combining them into one location gives you some of the ability to do the analytics, as you saw from Vincent before, as well as identify issues that are common across the different operating systems. The other thing, as we're talking about cross-platform, is that Backtrace was designed originally for server-based systems and C++ systems, And often with mobile apps, there's some backend component, a service or a server that's running. We can collect crashes and errors from those locations as well. So that's kind of the first thing, cross-platform. The second, grouping. Vincent pointed out the fingerprint that we use to deduplicate. We often hear from customers that the fingerprints in Crashlytics and Firebase are not as accurate as they are in Backtrace. What that means is your individual fingerprints are either too broad or too narrow. In many cases, those crashes that you get in iOS or Android are not uniquely identified in Firebase, so you'll see multiple entries for something that actually is occurring, has one root cause. And on the flip side, the exceptions that you get are all grouped together in one exception bucket. So you have no way of breaking those out in Firebase. The third main thing that we hear, integration to workflow tools, and kind of that plus customization. So we quickly went through Jira integration. We have complete two-way sync with Jira. So issues can be raised in Jira, assigned to the right team. You can mark that as resolved and fixed in a certain version. And Backtrace will understand that and then do regression detection. If we detect that that error occurs in a future version, we can reopen the ticket and send alerts. That type of two-way sync and rich integration with tools is not available with Firebase Crashlytics. Beyond that, we see people adding custom fields, custom metadata that they also use for triggering this information. You saw process age as one of the things that we collect by default. I don't think Crashlytics Firebase collects that. Really useful to identify startup bugs. But we often see people adding many other pieces of custom metadata that they'll further use to do different grouping and prioritization, depending on what's going on in their system. So 3 key things. It's cross-platform, it's accuracy of deduplication, and then it's integration with these third-party tools and adding as much custom information that you'd like. Hope that helped.
I thoroughly enjoyed that explanation. Also, the break is not bad. Any other questions? No. Well, let's show something else then. And I hope that this is going to show everything correctly. Do you all see my Xcode? I see a yes. Okay, cool. So what we have here is that app that is basically fully set up. So we see the environment and the token and stuff like that. What I quickly wanted to show is how do you get this running in the real device cloud? Because what I mentioned before, on emulators, crash reporting just works differently, and you want to, of course, be sure that your crash reporting works. Now, I hope that if I do, archive, that still shows up in my screen share. Looks like it does. What it then does is create, well, iOS developers are probably way familiar with that, so I don't really have to explain it. I'm just filling time here. I was hoping that it would be done quicker because I just did it before. But what it will do is it will build archive with that app. And if I open up my organizer and let's see if that still shows up in the screen share, it does not. See, I thought so. So what we see then here is basically that app that was created. How you can get it on SAUS. For Android, it's very obvious, right? Because it's just the APK. But for iOS, usually you have a lot of problems with like signing and designated devices and stuff like that. SAUS actually manages that really nicely for you. So you can just export it as a ad hoc app. Turn off the rebuild from bitcode, no app thinning, basically. You can automatically manage the signing. That's all fine. So it's going to create all that. Then you can export it. And I'll just export it to my downloads. So it's as easy as that. I mean, I haven't shown that much yet. So let me switch my screen share again. And let me go to browser. No, this is my wrong browser. See, I knew that. No, it's the right browser. Excellent. All right. So Sauce Labs. Let me log in again. And I know that we have 5 minutes left, so I'm going to do this real quick. So what I can do the moment that I have that is probably you guys cannot see the window, but I'm selecting that version that was just created from the Xcode, and I can just add that there. It's a very big app, as you see. And that just shows up. So we see in basically a mobile app, I uploaded that. See that it's uploaded basically less than a minute ago. You can then go ahead and select the device. Let's go for an iPhone 13 or something like that, 13 mini. So what Sauce does under the hood is actually re-sign the app so that it can run on these devices. So you actually don't really have to know that much about the devices that are in the cloud here. We'll just make sure that app gets re-signed, and what we have here is then just the app that will send a couple of errors now, and I can crash it as well. Now for the dreaded demo effect, because like usually when I do that, of course, and I go and try to show it, then it doesn't show. It does show up. Okay, so I thank the gods of the internet, the demo gods. We see that I sent three errors, so these were managed and caught, and then I sent basically a crash. So this version, I didn't upload the symbols. So notice that I don't really get a lot of information on my call stack. So the reason for that is I didn't upload my symbols. I can. So I could very easily from that archive that was just built, upload the symbols. So I can just go here and then I can upload it. But we're running out of time, so I'm not going to do that. So let me stop my screen share. So we have 3 minutes left. If there are any questions, if someone wants to see the equivalent in Android or anything like that, I'd be more than happy to answer that. But you guys are probably tired after 2 of these intense sessions. So I think that with that, just make sure that there's nothing else in the Q&A.
I'll throw in a plug while we're doing that.
Okay.
I don't know if it's been mentioned before, but for everyone who does use RDC today, the Real Device Cloud, there are some new capabilities that are slowly being rolled out to help you debug errors while you're testing on RDC faster. Specifically, you're going to start to see some network traffic information, and in a few weeks, device vitals and now crash and error reports. So those same crash and errors that Vincent just did and that you saw from the device showed up in Backtrace. In RDC itself, under test results, you'll start to see crashes and errors from your different test runs now. So this is going to occur as long as your Backtrace SDK is integrated to the app. So you'll need to work with your development team if you're not on the development side. But that's another benefit that you'll get from using Backtrace with the rest of the Sauce solution. All your data is going to start to show up in your RDC test results as well. So we very excited about this and bringing it to market, and you'll see more from the team on this capability in the coming weeks. And here's your preview.
That's right. It's a preview, and not everything. Like the demo went smoothly so far, but like right now, I don't think that I set the appropriate link up here. That's because it's in a different project. This instance is linked to a different project, so it doesn't show up. But if it would have been linked, what you would have seen is basically the errors that were detected during this session. So it would have been really nice if I could have shown that. But this is the way that it would show up. You would see 3 errors, 1 crash, and you would be able to click through and go to the dashboard for that specific device for this test run that we just did. So thanks for reminding me, Jason. I would have completely forgot that otherwise. Wonderful. And with that, we are in time. So if anyone is trying to integrate and has questions, feel free to reach out to either Jason or me on like Twitter, email, contact info@saucelabs.com. You'll find us. Yeah, thanks for attending this session. And I'm not sure what button to click now, Susie or Pilar. Do I click leave? I think I just click leave, right? Anyways, bye.